Yeah. I hate that I just did that. That's so funny. There we go. I got it back instantly. No concern whatsoever. Hey guys, how you doing today? Boy, I got a weird day today, man. I had one of those days. So, full disclosure, right? I am a night owl, right? I don't go to bed until like 4 a.m., right? 5 a.m. That's who I am. That's how I've always been. Even when I was like a little kid, that's how I was. Like mom and dad would like put me to bed and then they would like go off and I would just be up and then everybody would be like, John's so tired in the morning. And I'd be like, yeah, because this whole idea that we should be planning our lives around a 9 to 5, like it seems like the opposite of what humanity is. Like there are many people who do many different things and operate in different rhythms and are of different are on different systems and patterns and all this kind of stuff. Like it's normal as far as I'm concerned. Anyway, I had one of those times where I like went to sleep and I got up just normally. I remember looking at my alarm clock and being like, "Oh yeah, okay, I got plenty of time." And then like my head hit the pillow again, thinking like, "I'll just rest here for a moment and then I'll get up and like go on and do my day. I need to go grocery shopping, right?" And then I like wake up and it's literally 4:30. Which is way too late. Even for me, that's like big sleep in. That's a huge sleep in. And I still got to go get groceries, right? So I like grab all the stuff I need to do and like run down to the grocery store. Because if I don't get groceries today, I have no food, right? I have 0% food. And so I like run down there, run back. I've got to like upload the day's episode today. So I like start uploading that. Get home, throw all the groceries into the fridge, right? Have enough time to like make my coffee, swoop in, get some links open for the day, start the show. Oh, I've got the wrong panel, and look at this. I'm so fucking, there we go. Jeez Louise. Drew, Matthias, how you guys doing today? Bumbleguppy, how you guys doing today? Oh my goodness, I'm in disarray. I'm so disorganized right now. So today's stream is going to be probably a disorganized mess the entire time. And but such is life, right? Not every day is going to be a well-organized situation. At 8 o'clock today, guys, I've got Dan Trays coming in. Dan recently did a 60-kilometer walk from Toronto City Hall to Oshawa City Hall, 60 kilometers, in order to raise awareness for the disabled and the homeless. So, hey Tash, how you doing? Hey PLC, how you doing, bud? Good to see you. And that reminds me, PLC. I'm helping you tomorrow, right? We'll touch base on that later. You still got to send me the address, bud, and the time. I don't know when and where to come. Yeah, I made it on time. I too am a night owl. Yeah, I love being a night owl. It's so quiet. It's so peaceful. There's no one around to like cause you any problems, right? You get to read and research and live in peace. You know, it's nice. It's nice. It's nice to be a night owl, and it's super nice to be a night owl. I really love it. The problem, of course, comes when like you're a night owl type, and then someone's like, "Okay, we're gonna do a meeting, and it's gonna be at 10 a.m. Okay?" And you're like, "Okay, I'll make it. I can be there. I can do that." Okay, so we've already got POC in the chat with 10. Let's move on to today's number, guys. This is gonna be a weird one. This one today, I suspect. Let's get the numbers in the chat. I am feeling. What am I feeling? I'm gonna go with a 2. I'm on a 2 today. I'm yet to win this
Here
thing,
we go
so
for
it's all a
today's
faff no matter
number.
what.
It's September 30, 2021. 10 balls. Each ball has a number.
We got
Numbers
sevens,
1
we got
through
8,
10.
we got a 10, we got a 1.
Swirl the numbers.
Swirl the numbers. My absolute favorite. Lots of ones.
Pick a number.
Got lots of doubling up happening in the chat today.
Today's number
is 4. Wah, 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 wah. Okay, hold on, wait a minute. So we've got two ones, 2 sevens. Aga, did you come in late on that 4? Did you just say 4? Are you trying to abuse the leg system? Okay. This is what we do. We've got 2 people with 7s and 2 people with 1s, right? 7 plus 1 divided by 2 is 4, right? And Aga got the 4. And then a Bumbleguppy, 8 divided by 2 as well, sure. So you know what? Everybody in the chat won. Everybody in the chat won. Da, da, da. I love being able to make that work. And because I said 2, right? So I'm allowed to divide or times everything by 2 if I want to. And Aga picks it. There you go. Aga's the true winner. But the rest of us, I feel like we won a spiritual victory today. For sure. Let me get my graphing calculator out. Exactly. Okay. Here's a great little meme that I've been seeing going around. Because of what's happened in Germany, where the German government has voted to expropriate over 200,000 apartments from the major, house scalpers, the house hoarders that exist throughout Europe and the rest of the world, indeed. And so I'm seeing this meme where it's like, Berliners, our rent went from 400 to 800. Let's take apartments away from greedy corporate landlords. Americans, I can't afford teeth and I need 4 roommates to pay rent, but at least I have freedom. So the truth, dude. Like, it's so the truth. Like, what's happened in Berlin and what's happened in Germany is embarrassing us. Like, it's an embarrassment what's going on, right? Like, they have a strong enough communist and socialist movement in Berlin and in Europe that they're actually able to get these sorts of things done for their own people. They're able to respond to crises rationally. Whereas here, we're still, like, selling ourselves out to our wealthy owners, right? Like, our wealthy owners are, shooting themselves into space, and Elon Musk and Jeff Bezos are in a pissing contest about who can have the highest number of money, right? Like, this kind of dumb bullshit. Which is just a pissing contest. Like, it's like, it reveals that they are just little boys, right? That, like, neither of them is saying, hey, I have over $100 billion. I wonder if I could do anything helpful for anyone with $100 billion. What? Elon Musk has 0.0000001 more dollars than I do? Whip the serfs! Work harder, you lazy serfs! I need more money, so Elon Musk is no longer the wealthiest, but it is me, Jeffrey Bezos. And then Musk, he turns around and does the same, and it's just like this cycle of stupid exploitation so that these 2 little boys can have higher numbers in their bank accounts. It's just the most childish bullshit. And in the meantime, we've got, like, legitimate crises going on. Like, it would be one thing if this was happening and everybody was just kind of, like, bumping along in their normal life. But, like, have you noticed the planet's going to burn down? Have you noticed the 600,000 homeless people lying out on the streets, right? Have you noticed that Amazon factories are literally surrounded by slums? Have you noticed? Literally how it is in Vancouver, yeah. People renting out garden sheds, yeah, for $800. Yeah, it's disgusting. Like, what we're doing here in North America can only be described as disgraceful and disgusting. Like, it's despicable. Our politicians are the most disgraceful politicians that they can't figure out, like, oh, hey, we've got all these empty houses owned by literal house hoarders who are just hoarding properties and operating the same way that ticket scalpers operate, like. Maybe not, right? Maybe not. And they can't just figure out, like, hey, we should have sections of the city that just have cheaper rent, right? Like, housing should be a human right? Not if you live in Canada and the United States, get fucked, live on the streets. That's what you get. And then when the cops come and beat your head in, right? That's all totally fine. By the time all that money sifts from Bezos's and Musk's family to the rest of the economy, inflation will have made the money useless. Yeah, right. And it's not going to do that, right? Like, what we have set up now is a return to feudalism, right? That people like the Bezos family and the Musk family and the Gates family, these people will be the dynastic empires moving forward. Bill Gates is literally setting his family up to do this, right? That the structure of the Gates family, what's called the Gates Foundation, which is the Gates family, he's buying up all the agricultural land he can get his hands on, right? So he's doing what Galen Weston did, which is to wedge himself between people who need food and people who produce it. Yuan Buchanan, good to see you, bud. I don't know if I've ever seen you in here. Good to see you. That meme perfectly represents the current state of America, and it's only going to get worse. That's exactly right, bud. That's exactly right. It is only going to get worse. That here in Canada, we might be able to dodge the worst of it because it looks like our political system and our populace is not willing to sell itself out to the capitalist death cult completely. That we did erect social services and social care throughout the pandemic that may carry through. Like, these are the silver linings. We passed something called the CERB. We passed support systems to ensure that people wouldn't immediately get thrown out of their homes and immediately evicted. And those social systems are more or less carrying through. That we have a workers' party called the NDP that is actually in support of these policies and is actually working to ensure that they don't get taken away. But nothing like that exists in America. And shamefully, because here's the truth. $1,000 per month cash handout would grow the economy by $2.5 trillion, says new study. So yet another complete slam dunk for the basic income movement, right? Yet another complete slam dunk. The report was released in August by the left-leaning Roosevelt Institute. And but we've already known this. Like, if you follow something like the basic income, you know, right? You're well aware that basic income style schemes, such as the old age pension or the child care benefit, which has existed here in Canada for almost a decade, grow the economy. For every dollar you put in, you get $2 out. And it's based on a very simple idea, right? Like, if people can't spend money, if they can't eat, right, then they can't participate whatsoever in the economy, right? They can't possibly attempt to grow the economy, and in fact, they turn into a drain on the economy. But if you just create a foundation for them to operate on in a free market, then they're able to participate and they're able to continue moving forward. It's the exact same rationale for like why funding the arts is a good idea, because if you fund the arts, people go to see the arts, and then you can set up little cafes and gift shops, and you can set up stores, right? So that when people go to the area, they'll also shop in the area, right? It's the same reason why you always want to build transit. It's always a good idea to build transit 100% of the time. Because if you create a transit stop, businesses want to be around the transit stop, right? People want to live around transit stops. People are able to move and participate in the wider and larger economy more effectively. So it all kind of falls back on the old adage, you've got to spend money to make money. But if you don't have any money, then you can't make any money. And it's becoming shameful. Because this is an easy solution that could be passed very simply. Here in Canada, it's actually become extremely shameful that our politicians are not instantly passing this legislation. The Senate has literally written a letter to the Prime Minister saying, you should pass this legislation, right? That's our Senate that's doing that. It's an incredibly popular policy, right? 90% of liberals and NDPers support it. 50% of conservatives support it, Okay? So when you think conservative, you usually think about like the most shriveled ghoul you've ever met, but 50% of them think it's a good idea. So you not only have majority within the party that is most enthralled by the capitalist death cult, but you have super majorities within the other parties. Why is this legislation not being passed? Right? Why is it not being pushed through? And then on top of all of that, when you actually do the calculations and you figure it all out, and the parliamentary budget officer has done just this, you find out that we actually spend more to maintain the system of poverty we have now, right? So this poor fuck right here, right? This poor fuck right here, we spend more to keep him in that situation than it would cost for us to provide food and shelter for him. It's the same argument for what's going on in America with the healthcare system, right? Americans are like, oh, it'll raise my taxes 4%, forgetting that they spend 20% of their income on healthcare, right? That it's just cheaper. And and this to me has become the talking point when people say, well, how are you going to pay for that? I'm flabbergasted. I'm flabbergasted that the talking point from everybody isn't it's cheaper. And just like, no more explanation needed. Like, we don't need to move on with, like, we don't need to waste a bunch of time on it. When somebody says, how are you going to pay for that? The answer is, it's cheaper. And that's it. This conversation is over, right? Like, do we really have to, like, spin the wheel on this much longer? So, not only is it cheaper, right? Not only does it work, it also grows the economy. So, what we are faced with now is the truthful reality that the capitalist death cult wants to spend more in order to maintain this person's desperation and poverty. That's what they want. To them, spending more to have this outcome is a feature. It is not an oversight. It is not a bug. It is not, oh, well, something should be done, but oh, it's so much effort, all of this kind of stuff. None of that is real. The truth is that the capitalist death cult wants to spend extra money. It wants to spend extra money in order to keep people, the 600,000 Americans that are homeless on the streets. It wants them there. It is happy that there are 600,000 people homeless on the streets. It gives the system pleasure. It gives the owners pleasure to know that those people have been evicted and are in suffering. To keep people starving and homeless is the goal of the system. It is not designed or interested at all in the amelioration of the suffering of its own citizenry. And the proof of that statement is that ameliorating the suffering of its own citizens is cheaper than what we're doing now. So the whole thing is totally fucking bullshit. Hey Chris, how you doing? Happy Truth and Reconciliation today, comrades. Yeah, did we enjoy our day of liberal pandering? Exactly. Meanwhile, some actual good news on that line is that Indigenous children set to receive billions after judge rejects Trudeau challenges, right? That the Trudeau government has been trying to prevent this from happening for whatever reason, right? Like, that the government shouldn't have to pay for kidnapping children and torturing people. Like, that's not how it should work. And a judge finally just said, get fucked, right? Conversation's over. So you've got 2 years ago, the Human Rights Tribunal ruled that the federal government had willfully and recklessly discriminated against Indigenous children living on reserves by failing to properly fund child and family services. The tribunal ruled that the federal government was required to pay compensation worth $40,000 to each child removed from his or his or her home. Yeah, but instead of paying out, the Trudeau government said his government would appeal the ruling to make sure we're getting compensation right. Yeah, right. So the idea that the Trudeau government is actually whatsoever interested in truth and reconciliation, is whatsoever interested in the actual history of what's going on here, it's total bullshit. Like, it's total bullshit. Like, this guy is not... Like, this guy, as time moves forward, it's becoming more and more obvious that this guy is just a detached prince. That's it. He's always been surrounded by wealthy people. He's always been surrounded... Like, remember, this guy went out on stage in front of his friends, his family, his peers, and his teachers, wearing blackface, singing Deo, and nobody thought to do anything about it. Right? So you're talking about a highly racist, entrenched, systemic racist society that treats this guy like he's a fucking little prince who has always been groomed to do this job, and he's doing it well by defending his people, right, against the truth and reconciliation of minority groups into the society. Well, hi, Salad. Don't know if I've ever seen you here, bud. Good to see you. And when Bernie does the easy math of how it gets paid for, the media just looks at them like a turd on their lawn. Exactly. That's their job, which is why they're losing credibility, right? That the media in I'm actually like, I wouldn't be able to do this if our media was operating properly, right? Like, if our media was operating properly, I'd just be some asshole. Right? Like, I'd just be like some fucking crank. Nobody would pay any fucking attention to me because I wouldn't have anything worthwhile to say because our media would already be saying it. Right? But our media is so bereft of credibility. Like, it's so detached from anything resembling journalism or anything resembling actual truth-telling any longer that people like me get a position in the society to actually speak their mind and be heard because I'm telling the truth. And, like... And connecting dots and doing fucking journalism and actually being like, hey, like this article here, yesterday I read this article aloud. I just got it posted as a clip and I made my commentary on it. If you guys don't know what this is U.S. war plans with China taking shape. This is a fellow Brian Berletic going through a recent RAND document that was released. This article gets banned off Twitter. You can't post this onto Twitter. It's considered too dangerous on Twitter. So I have read it aloud and put it up on my YouTube. And I consider that to be probably the best journalism I've seen in the last 2 years. Right? This guy, Brian Berletic, for writing it, and then me for fucking reading it aloud. Like, we don't have journalists anymore. They don't exist. The pursuit of journalism is dead. That and the corporate power structure is beginning to notice it, which is why they keep pushing for online censorship, right? Because people like Jimmy Dore, people like Russell Brand, people like Joe Rogan, right? They get millions and millions of views on their stuff, which is like double the amount of viewership that these fucking corporate hacks are getting. Right? And then when you actually break it down to the demographics, you realize that the only people who are watching the corporate news anymore are like 70-year-olds. Like, their demographic is dying off. And what's going to be left after they're gone? Because no one's going to trust Fox News, ABC, MSN, any of these guys. Like, I'm not. I'm never going back. Like, those guys have lost my... They are psychopaths. Like, they've completely lost my trust. And if somebody comes to me and starts talking to me like Rachel Maddow, I'm just like, okay. Like, I look at them like they're a fucking flat earther because they're nuts. And because of their refusal to tell the truth about extremely basic things, like Bernie Sanders pointing out that a universal healthcare system is cheaper, because of their inability to inform the public about what is tacitly the truth, they just lose credibility completely. And it's very weird to see how the public has and the public generally is of that mind, except on specific issues. There's specific issues that the public is like lockstep with the mainstream media in. Anything about China, the populace is just like, oh yeah, everything the media tells us about China is 100% accurate 100% of the time, 100%. Yeah. Like it's a blind spot that we still listen to corporate media when it comes to China for some reason, but like we wouldn't listen to them. Like, and there are like millions and millions of people who are like not listening to the media about a vaccine, right? So it's simultaneously horrifying and also gratifying because it means that I have a job. Look at that. Good opportunity to like, share, subscribe, hit the bell, hit the whistle, hit all the things, and give me some money. Give me some money. There's a Patreon button in the description. Click that button. Send $1 my way. Even $1 helps. And if you're already giving me $1, maybe make it $5. I gotta pay rent. Oh my God. It is such a big win for the survivors, Chris, for sure. And it's a big win for Canada, if you ask me. It's a big win for Canada. Like, I want to see a truth and reconciliation movement where these groups can all come together and we can all admit what happened. We all know what happened, right? And we dismantle these systems and we create new systems that are more accommodating and more in line with what everybody wants to see. Because, like, we all just want to live peaceably, right? Isn't that the truth? Like, doesn't everybody just want to live peaceably? Like, we just want to have our little space that we can be ourselves in without judgment or concern, and be able to interact in the world safely, right? Like, that's what we all want. And it seems to me like things like this, where things like this are done for other reasons, right? And when you dig deeper into what those reasons are, it's literally just like protecting the system of white supremacy that exists here in Canada. That, oh, I'm white, so I'm better, right? Like, that's the attitude. Which, that attitude is under threat. And so you got your like Jordan Peterson crowd or your Rex Murphy types who are just like, we need to protect Western civilization. And when you actually say like, okay, what is this Western civilization you're talking about? And when you dig deeper on that, you realize what they're talking about is the system of white supremacy is what they're talking about. Because it doesn't make sense to say Western civilization. It's like, well, then why are you so against Marx? Like, Marx is part of Western civilization, right? What's the hate on with Marxism? Like, Marx comes out of the Western civilization tradition. We should actually listen to him. Oh yeah, you guys are always chatty first thing. Hey DM, how you doing, bud? Hope you're feeling well. We need a massive UBI protest at MP's office all around the country. We need just massive protests, dude. Like, I don't even know if it needs to be focused. Like, we need bodies to be in people's offices. I truly believe this is how a real change starts. Coordinated, organized effort to change the political will. Yeah, directed at those in powers, MP, ministers, of course, in order to expedite a UBI bill and eventually into law. Otherwise, we're just running in circles, wishing and hoping our own little comfort zone. Yeah. Echo chambers for something that is otherwise impossible. I completely agree with you. Like, I've been doing street protests more and more I'm beginning to see that the street protests are no longer going to be enough. That this is the corner I turned with the climate change protest that I recently participated in. There was a lot of people there. There's between I would wager like 500 to 700 people. So a good healthy amount of people, a good chunk of people. But the whole time I was doing it, I was just like, none of this matters. Like, the politicians are not going to give a fuck about this. Like, they're gonna watch the parade go by, and then they're going to keep doing their work, right? They don't care. We need to take those 600 to 700 people and put them in the offices. Like, we need to be occupying the halls of power completely with the statements of, like, these are our demands, and if you don't do these, we don't leave, right? And that's what it is going to take. Like, it is going to take that kind of thing. Like, our leaders are so sociopathic and so detached from reality and like, willing to do, like, horrible, horrific things to us that it is going to take, like, a straight up, like, I'm of the opinion now, like, if it wasn't for the fact that we're probably going to oust Ford in the upcoming election, we hope, I'm generally of the opinion that to get Ford to budge on any of this kind of stuff, you'd literally have to take his house over. Like, you'd literally have to have, like, 1,000 people just take his house over. I think that's what it would take for someone like Ford. Because he is, like, the definition of a detached sociopath, right? Like, he does not care about human life at all. He thinks the disabled and, like, the autistic are dingy and dirty and should be put aside. Like, that's how Doug Ford interacts with the world. So, men like him, we'll have to take over their houses. Like, straight up. And I don't think there's a problem with that. Like, I don't see a problem with that at all. Like, I say that kind of stuff and people get, like, really like, oh, clutch my pearls and oh my goodness. And I'm like, no, that's what it's going to take. Like, these people have control of the rules in the system. Like, go fuck yourself. Hey, Duke. Hey, comrades. Glad to see the court rejected the government challenge there. Have a bit of a headache today, but otherwise okay. How are you all? I'm doing well, but I had a weird day today. I had one of those days. You ever have one of these days where you, like, wake up, you look at your clock, and you're like, oh, that's plenty of time. And then you, like, put your head back down, and then you wake up, and, like, literally the rest of time has passed. Like, all time has passed, and you're just like, what the hell is happening? I think what happened to me is have been recklessly eating gluten, and I have a gluten intolerance for sure. And so it's just, like, burnt me out, completely burnt me out. And I like went through my whole food supply, got rid of all the gluten, and then I just got to get back on the, like, not eating gluten thing, because you know how it goes, right? When you have, like, a mild intolerance or something like this, you're like, oh, I can have a little bit of that, that's fine. And then the next day you're like, oh, I can have a little, you know what, everything's fine, I'll just keep eating this is totally fine. And then before you know it, you're like, eyes are puffy, and you're just like, mm. Takes a few days to get over it. What? Okay. I got a stomachache. Blame it on the death cult. Yeah, blame it on the death cult. That's right. Get that bread, man. The apologetics I have heard people activate with Trudeau is wild. He has no real power. He can't fix everything. Yeah. It devolves pretty quick into blatant racism when pushed. The idea that the Prime Minister of Canada has no real power is childishly stupid. Like, you have to be, like, completely illiterate to think that that's the truth. The Prime Minister of Canada has enormous amounts of power. I actually argue that the Prime Minister of Canada has more power than the President of the United States in terms of what they can actually do within their system. Because you got to remember, our system literally was a system of fealty to the Queen of England, right? Like, that's why she's on all our money, right? The Queen of England would say something and then dispense it to the Prime Minister, who then would dispense it through the system of power to get it done throughout the society. That's what it was structured to do. It wasn't, and now we've taken this system, right? And the Prime Minister stands atop of it, connects with the Queen, but now the Queen is gone, right? And all of the powers that the Queen had have distilled into the office of the Prime Minister. So when we elect a party and they appoint a Prime Minister, they're literally appointing a king. Like, Justin Trudeau has power. Like, that's the thing. I think about this all the time when I think about Justin Trudeau, right? Like, is this guy going to be in his 70s and 80s? Like, when he gets older and he's no longer in power and, like, he's gone, is he going to be in his 70s and 80s and he's going to be wondering, like, why didn't I fucking use some of that? Like, why didn't I do stuff? Why did I just, like, pay fealty to these oil companies? Like, what the fuck was I doing with all that? Like, this guy has an enormous amount of power in Canadian society. The idea that he doesn't is childish and stupid. You've got to be very stupid to think that Justin Trudeau does not have enormous amounts of power. If he wanted to, he could nationalize, and this is no joke, Justin Trudeau, by himself, right now, could nationalize the fossil fuel industry. Yes, he could. Yes, he could. Don't think he couldn't. Yes, he can. Like, not right now, because he's in a minority position. But if he was the Prime Minister of a majority, he could 100% do that. There would be that'd be like, Swish wouldn't even think about it. You should go and research what his father was up to. Like, the stuff that his father did, right? Like, there's that phrase of just watch me, right? People said to Pierre Elliott Trudeau, oh, you can't do that. And he said, just watch me. And then he fucking went and did it because he's the goddamn Prime Minister. Like, It's astounding to me that people are walking around thinking that this guy doesn't have any power. Like, he has no, like, when he showed up at the Montreal climate change rally, right? Like back in 2019, Daniel talked about this yesterday on yesterday's stream, that Justin Trudeau shows up at a climate change rally and like joins in the rally and all that kind of stuff. And literally everybody's looking at him being like, dude, you're the fucking prime minister. Like, we're protesting you. Do stuff. Like, he absolutely could. Like, he absolutely could. But I do feel like Justin Trudeau is just enthralled to the power structure that's around him and has always been raising him, right? That he doesn't actually have his own independent view, and he doesn't actually have like a view of what homelessness really looks like. He doesn't understand what poverty is. He doesn't understand what's going on in his own country because he's a detached prince. And he's always been that way, right? He's always been surrounded by people. He's always been surrounded by yes men. He's always been surrounded by wealthy surrogates who have always known that he is a figure of power in the society. And so they've always mollycoddled him and they've always protected him from what's actually happening in the society so that he'll never actually even realize, oh, wait, I'm the prime minister. I could just eliminate poverty. Like, he could. He straight out could. Like, and it would be easy. It really would be. The hardest things for the prime minister to achieve are to change the structure so that the next prime minister is beholden, right? That the great achievement of Pierre Elliott Trudeau was erecting the Charter of Rights and Freedom, right? Getting the Charter of Rights and Freedoms erected was one of the major successes of Pierre Elliott Trudeau. Can never be taken away from him, right? You can critique him all you want on all kinds of things, but he is the reason Canada has a Charter of Rights and Freedoms. And that Charter of Rights and Freedoms has protected us from a lot of shit. It needs to be amended to include housing and food as a basic charter right. And Pierre Elliott Trudeau attempted to get those things in the Charter of Rights and Freedoms and couldn't make it happen. Because to amend the charter and to get such a document in place, you actually need to get permission from the provinces. That's how the system operates. That to amend such a large, focal, like constitutional document, you need to negotiate with the provinces, and you need to. It's very similar to amending the American Constitution, right? You can't. That's something the prime minister can't just like throw a layup on and do, right? Like, that's a major, major, major pursuit. And Justin Trudeau's not up for it. Like, he's not up for it. He's not his father, right? Like, he's not his father. He's not a lawyer. He doesn't know anything about the system he operates in. And the people around him do everything they can to make sure he doesn't know, right? Because someone like Justin Trudeau could actually be quite dangerous, in my view, to the corporate power structure, right? He's a drama teacher, right? He's in the arts. He's in theater, right? He has an empathetic, compassionate worldview, right? But it's put through this liberalism filter. It's put through this liberal filter that is convinced that capitalism somehow works. And because he doesn't actually have a critique of capital, and he doesn't actually understand how the capital, or if he does understand how the capitalist system works, he understands that he's on the winning side. So, but if he were to suddenly turn the corner and think like, oh, hey, I could use my power to actually help people, that'd be extremely dangerous. That would be extremely dangerous to the power structure as it stands right now. So they can never let him do it. They can never let him do it. He always has handlers. He always has servants, right? Assistants, right? Whatever you want to call them. He always has people around him in order to protect him from the homeless and the poor and the disabled and all of this kind of stuff, so that he'll never actually hit a moment where he realizes that he could use his power for good. Which means that when he turns 70, right, like when he's in his old age retirement, he's going to be scratching his head being like, why didn't I do any of that? I was the goddamn prime minister of this place. I could have done a lot. I could have done a fucking lot. That's the thing that's astounding about him, is how little he's actually doing. Like, I imagine it takes an immense amount of energy and an immense amount of work to do this little and to be this worthless, right? Like, it's got to take a ton of energy to stand in the way of the people who actually want to get things done, Like, think about how much energy it must take to obfuscate, to block, to get in the way. There's a word that I'm really trying to think of, and it's not coming to my brain right now. But it's like to just obstruct. I did it. To be this obstructionist, right? Which is really what Trudeau is. He's mainly an obstructionist. Because, like, there are people in his own caucus who want to get stuff done. And he just doesn't let them. And it takes an amazing amount of energy to be this obstructionist. And when he gets older, he's going to be like, why the fuck did I do any of that? What was the point of any of that? Yeah, I just want basic needs to be covered. Yeah. Oh, you want to live in a society where people aren't starving on the streets and homelessness? Weird. That's a weird position, don't you think? People should be free to be homeless. They're free. Homelessness is freedom. That's right. Starvation is freedom. You just gotta pull yourself up by your bootstraps and work harder. Sell yourself to the capitalist death cult. And if you and sure, they're not paying you enough to give you the rent and the food that you're asking for in the first place, but that just means you need to get a better selling yourself to the capitalist death cult. Like, it's so fucking dumb where we are. Yeah. Yeah, but the hooked cross is from India, Hinduism, therefore it can't be racist. Yeah, exactly, dude. I hate that shit. For those of you who don't know what Mocked is talking about, that's like a real talking point. So Falun Gong is a purity cult, a racial purity cult. They believe things like their leader can become invisible and all this kind of stuff. They get thrown out of China for being, like, crazy, essentially. They own a newspaper called the Epoch Times. They are infecting the Conservative Party. Conservatives take ads out in their newspaper. Here's their emblem. This is their emblem. Remember, this group started in the 90s, okay? And anytime I talk to people about Falun Gong, what they say to me is what Mock just said. Yeah, but the hook cross is from India, Hinduism, therefore it can't be racist. Oh, yeah, no, you know, John, I think it's important for you to remember, be culturally sensitive. Yeah. So these guys are fucking fascists who get thrown out of their country for being fascists. They are operating here in North America. They own a dance studio called Shen Yu, where they do anti-communist propaganda through dance. Yes, I've seen it. Yes, it's real. They own a newspaper called the Epoch Times, where they disseminate COVID conspiracy theories. And they're infecting the Conservative Party. So this idea that these guys are not a significant and serious threat to what's happening here in Canada, I think you have to be kind of a Looney Tunes and out to lunch. And this talking point, like this, it's like liberalism 101. Just, they literally have a swastika on their emblem. Oh, well, like, let's form apologetics for why an organization should be using a literal swastika as its emblem. Like, let's defend that, right? Like, classic liberalism. Like, liberals defend fascists all the time. Yeah, food, shelter, healthcare, not much to ask for. Yeah, like, the basics. Like, the basics of what would make a civilization, right? If you're not feeding and sheltering your people, you're not really a society. Like, that's really what it is. If you're not feeding and sheltering your people, you're not a society. You're just a business, right? And if you see the withholding of food and shelter as a rational thing to do, then you're just admitting you're not a society, that you are just a business. Like, and that's what Canada and the United States is. Like, we're not a society. We're just a business. And it's getting obvious, right? It's getting obvious that's going to happen. And if you run a society like a business, like that way, well, don't be too surprised when the business fails, right? Because that's not how it actually works. I think it's still important to dethrone right-wing demagogues to disrupt their narrative hold over people, even if the replacement is just as right-wing. It's such a tough conversation, Bumbleguppy, because I keep having this conversation. Yes, I definitely see where you're coming from, but at the same time, I think that the narrative surrounding this dethroning of the right wing is not being honest about what's happening. They're not admitting that the Democrats are allies with the Republicans, right? They don't see it as a game. They don't see it that way. That when they are dethroning the Republicans, they are turning around and being like, yeah, Democrat, right? Yay! Instead of like taking the same kind of skeptical eye and being just as skeptical towards the Democrats as they are towards the Republicans. That to me is the problem that I see. Like, yeah, sure, get rid of the people who are literally saying we should round up the Jews. Yeah, I'm on board with that for sure. But don't pretend like these Democrats aren't going to bend the knee to these guys, because that's what they have always done. And it's a tough situation. It's a tough situation, right? I mean, I'm of the opinion that the only solution left for Americans is mass protest. Like, the White House should be surrounded. Like, it's stunning to me it hasn't already happened. Like, it's pretty stunning to me. Like, we've done it before. Throughout the 20s and 30s, the White House was surrounded. It was surrounded by thousands of people. Throughout the 60s and 70s, the White House was surrounded. It was surrounded by thousands of people. The idea that we can't do the same, it's odd to me that it's not already happening. Like, it's odd that it's being like the January 6th insurrectionists are the guys that are doing it. You know, it's just a bit strange to me. Yeah. Gluten sensitivity is double the work for very little pleasure. Yeah, dude, and it's just like, I miss cake. I miss cake, guys. I miss cake. Cake. Anyway. Yeah, YouTube does censor comments, Sal. I don't understand why either. Like, there seems to be no rhyme or reason for it. I know they censor links. That makes sense to me, why they would censor links. But there are some buzzwords that they definitely find and pick. And I think also there is it does, like, the chat has a memory, you know? So if you come in, and I know you're new, I haven't seen you around before, and you come in and you start posting something that YouTube considers like kind of a gray area sort of thing, and it's your first couple of posts, YouTube will just take them down. Whereas if someone like Ruth has been here since basically day one, Ruth, like, you've been here since the very beginning. If I should go back and take a look, see if that's true. Yeah, someone like Ruth could probably post something like that, and that would go through just fine, because Ruth is a regular, right? She's been here quite a bit and has made a lot of comments. So I do think YouTube has a memory, and I think that so that's probably what's happening. That's probably what's happening. And then there's always just the classic, like, shadow banning shit, right? Like, which I'm pretty sure my channel's been shadow banned. So we'll see. We'll see. I'm like right beneath 700 subscribers, and I can't get over it. I can't get over it. My comment was, young men are failing at a high rate. Yep. Male virginity is rising. Young men are bailing out of society. We've got an incel crisis. Yes. I completely agree, dude. Like, I completely agree. Like, okay. You guys know when I start talking about sex, it's like I gotta prep, because it is like the weeds, and I know what's gonna happen to me eventually. It is gonna happen to me eventually, that I'm gonna be faced down by some SJW type, right? Who's attempting to demonize sex. And that's really what it is that we are in a position now where we are demonizing sex. That sex itself is seen as dirty or dingy. There's a very puritanical perspective that's happening in our society regarding sex itself. That if you want to have sex, you've got to connect with, like, the one true person, your true love, right? You've got to connect in with that, and then literally go get married, and then you can, like, be behind closed doors and, like, all of that kind of stuff. In the society. And then we also have this, like, digital outlet where there is no fucking rules, right? Like, you can literally watch and see and participate in whatever you want on the internet. It's, like, as free as it can be. And people are seeing more and more that, like, oh, humanity is filthy. Like, we're filthy. We love it. And even that terminology, right? Filthy. Okay. But, like, sex is something that's built in. Have you noticed? Have you noticed how sex is sort of built in? How it's part of the whole natural system? That if you don't have sex, we literally die off as a species? Anyway, it's important that the capitalist death cult demonizes sex and attempts to isolate people and have less sex happen for two reasons. Reason the one, I think, is just a practical reason of overpopulation, right? That the capitalist death cult has confronted the idea of overpopulation, and instead of having actual conversations with its citizenry or even attempting to do anything, it's attempting to just have people have less sex. That's one way to do it, right? If everybody has less sex, there'll be less babies, there'll be less, right? And I think that is definitely part of the conversation. More importantly, though, I think that the capitalist death cult doesn't want people to be having sex, because if people start to realize that there is some other thing to pursue in life other than money, that they may do that. And that's a bad thing to have happen for the capitalist death cult. That you need to have people absorbed in the idea that the only thing worth pursuing is money. And if you can tie sexual success into the accumulation of money, right, all the better. But if you have people who just are interested in pursuing sex for the sake of pursuing sex, which, again, it's built in, it's natural, it's here, we live as a species with a sexual drive and a desire to pursue sex, that if you do that, that needs to be clamped down on, right? And so the natural result, in my view, is this incel situation, right? Where you have, because we have denigrated and demonized sex so much, we don't talk about it, we don't teach our kids about it, we don't do anything with that. It's considered dirty. It's like women who walk around wearing skimpy clothing are considered sluts, right? Now men who are pursuing sexual endeavors are considered rapists, right? Like there's this idea that has permeated and has taken over the society that a man who wants to have sex with a woman is no different than a rapist, right? Like that is a real thing that is happening in the society. And so all sides of the conversation are being demonized to enormous levels, that like a woman who wants to enjoy sex is considered like a subclass human, and a man who wants to enjoy sex is considered a violent rapist. Like, so you end up in this situation where for a man to find a woman who actually wants to have sex in the first place, there's all these walls and barriers, these societal constructs that exist that need to be pushed aside in the first place. And while both parties are attempting to navigate this, there's all of these methods that are in place to ensure that the connection doesn't happen in the first place. So even as the two parties are going, there's all of these, and people find reasons not to pursue sex with one another. And we're in the middle, like, so the incel crisis, in my perspective, is tied into the larger sexual crisis that our society is facing, right? That our society is in the midst of a sexual crisis. That, like, fundamentally, our society just needs to get laid, right? That if you took all of these incels and all of these SJW types and you had them have sex with one another, a lot of the tension would go down in the society because everyone's super pent up and everybody's like ratcheting and everything's like at a heightened kind of like kind of level, and there's no fucking outlet for it. And so the outlet, and we've seen it with the incels, because young men are more likely to do this kind of stuff because of the crazed situation with what's going on with testosterone. Well, what are incels doing? They're literally blowing themselves up about it. Like, that's a fucking crisis. That's a fucking crisis, right? It's a massive, massive, massive crisis. On the same level, in my view, as what's going on with the school shooting, which it has similar echoes, right? Like, there are natural systems that we are ignoring. We're literally saying to children, yeah, after you get out of school, you're going to go be homeless and live in a shitty society that doesn't give a fuck about you whatsoever. Like, yeah, I can't imagine why kids are picking up guns and shooting up places. Like, it does. What the heck? So we are amidst a sexual crisis for which the solution is a sexual revolution along the same level as the free love movement. The free love movement throughout the United States, like, people pretend like the free love movement was just like kids having sex and being dirty. Huh, those dirty kids, they don't want to listen to anybody. They're just going to do what they want to do, right? The free love movement was very, very important to feminism. It was an important feminist movement because it was a moment when women said, hey, I have my own personal body autonomy. I don't need my father's permission to marry a man, right? Like, I can go have sex with who I want to go have sex with, right? We have a sexual freedom, that our ability to choose our sexual partners is part of what it is to be a free, independent, individual person living in the world. And it was an important cultural moment, the free love movement, that has essentially been swept away. And we talk about some of the icons of it, like someone like John Lennon. John Lennon was like instrumental to the free love movement. He was deeply embedded in the free love movement, and we just completely forget about this. And since then, there has been such a pullback from that, right? Because that was just a spark up. That was just like a little moment. And now we're in a period of time where the sexual suppression is extreme. And because of the pandemic now, you can't even go to a fucking nightclub, right? You can't even just go to a place that's specifically there. I was saying before the pandemic happened and shut all the clubs down, I was saying that the nightclubs were the last institution that was honest, right? The last honest institution in North America were the nightclubs, because they didn't bullshit anybody about what they're here for. You're here to get drunk, dance, and fuck someone. That's what the nightclubs were for, right? Now they don't exist. So what's left? How do you even fucking meet people? So you're literally just like going on like this blind date stuff, like finding matchmakers, Tinder, all that dumb bullshit, right? And of course, like, people who are somewhat socially isolated, who have no experience, who are not taught about this, and then are demonized for their feelings, right? That if you get horny, like, take a look at what's happening online, right? There's the horny bat. You've seen this, right? Horny bat? Horny bat meme. So this guy, right? So they take the Doge, right? They take the Doge guy, and if something like horny happens online or something sexual, you end up with this dog in your stuff, right? This is the horny bat. And it looks really like, oh, it's just so cute, and oh, it's so harmless and all that kind of stuff. But the underlying messaging of it is, this is something you're attracted to. It makes you feel sexual. It makes you feel sexual feelings, and that is bad, right? That is bad that you are having feelings of sexuality towards sexual people. And if you go on to, and it's so fucking stupid, because if you go on to like go on to TikTok for 30 seconds, go on to fucking TikTok for 30 seconds and start doing this, right? Oh, wow, there's a bunch of fucking people on TikTok shaking their booty, showing off their titties, right? Big muscle-bound guys, like, flexing and doing all kinds of stuff. What do you fucking think they're doing? Like, what do you think they're fucking doing? So people want to engage in sexual activity. People want to be sexual. People want to be horny. People want this. And how do I know we want it? Because everybody is born with a sex drive that they want to pursue and they want to engage in. Everyone wants to have sex. Everyone loves sex. We love seeing sex. We love having sex around us. We love the whole thing. We love the whole thing. The trouble is, we've literally disconnected ourselves from having meaningful conversations or teaching people about what sex is, how is it going, how do you deal with it, right? How do you deal with it? We don't talk about it, we don't teach it, we don't do anything. But literally for an entire generation, we have been telling people, just abstain. What the fuck are you talking about? Just abstain? Are you kidding me? Like, walk up to somebody who really needs to pee and tell them, just don't. Just abstain. Just abstain from peeing. And you see how ludicrous I think this conversation is. Like, it's asinine that we are saying to people who have a built-in genetic demand to pursue sexual interests, just don't. Just abstain. Yeah, that's legitimate and logical. When what we should be doing, and what any rational, free-thinking, empathetic society would demand that we do, is we would inform people about what the fuck is going on. We would talk to them about how to be safe about it, how to embark on this journey in reasonable ways. And honestly, here's the controversial one that all the SJWs are going to get down my throat about. We should teach people how to fucking enjoy it. We should teach people how to enjoy it. They should be enjoying sex. We should demystify this. It's an absolute abomination that men are walking around not knowing where the clit is. What? What are you even telling me right now? You're telling me that we are allowing adults to come into our society. We are allowing young men to be released from a system of education that we spend billions of dollars in order to teach them basic life skills, and they're walking out of that establishment not even knowing where the clitoris is? Fuck you. Fuck you. That is a failure. Like, that is a burn the building down, total failure across the board. Basic shit should be known about how to please a woman. How a woman should please a man. Basic shit like this. And nobody at any point should stand up and say, that sounds dirty and filthy and all that. Like, that kind of attitude got the Puritans thrown the fuck out of Europe, right? Because it's corrosive. It's destructive, and you're seeing what's happening now because of it. We've got these fucking young men literally blowing themselves up, right? Because they can't fucking get laid. We're a very stupid people. Like, it's very stupid what we're doing. Like, it's very, very stupid. Like, and stupid to the same level as, like, literally telling people, just don't pee. Same exact thing. Like, anytime I hear this abstinence bullshit, anytime I hear people talking about, like, oh, it's dirty and disgusting and dingy and all this stuff, like, literally, like, I think of these people the same way as if they were talking about, like, basic bodily functions. Like, go pee. And it just ties into the larger thing that I always talk about. We're children. We're so childish. We just refuse to grow up. We refuse to be adults about this. We refuse to look at ourselves and our neighbors and our society and admit that there are realities that exist within the system that we do not control and we should accept. And one of the major ones is sex is real. People want to have it. It is built in to who we are and what we want to pursue. Telling people not to do it is stupid and childish and dumb. Telling people how to do it safely and while simultaneously maximizing their enjoyment is probably smarter, right? That the system itself wants us to do it, so we should probably know how to do it well. Yeah, okay. I think I hit it on what I wanted to say on that. Yeah, you didn't think you were opening that can of worms, did you, Sal? You didn't think I was going to talk about that for fucking 20 minutes. I got lots of opinions on this, dude. I got like when I say that there isn't a single credible institution in our society, I mean it. Like, I mean it. That we are failing people on the most basic level of, like, demonizing sexuality. Are you kidding me? So fucking embarrassing. Isn't it funny they are so easy to do the right thing and they all choose not to? Yeah, they choose not to. Yeah, of course, you guys have been talking about this. I'm looking forward to reading this chat. This chat's going to get sexy. This chat's going to get sexy. Yeah, I purposely made some spellings wrong. That's the way to do it, bud. That's the way to do it. And as you stick around, it'll just let you through. It will. It doesn't censor some of the other people around who stick around. If I was a PM with a majority for a day, implement UBI for all Canadians, free housing for the homeless, rent control, nationalize fossil fuel industry, among other things. Yeah, it's stupid that we're not. Like it's getting to be just embarrassing in my view. Yeah, being a premier is a pretty powerful position. It is. Like it's because it's got the same, because you're given the kind of freedom to do what you want as a baron or a duke, right? That your only responsibility really is to the federal government, and even that's typically a negotiation. So premier has a lot of power. Well, and you can see that with Doug Ford. The amount of cuts that Doug Ford has done, like Doug Ford cuts. Is this the page? There's a page that's taking action. No. There's a page that... here we go. Right? This is all of the cuts, what they call PC actions, but they're always cuts, right? And if you go back far enough, you can see, like, how devastating some of these cuts have been, right? Like, Doug Ford's first year cuts are evil. I just don't know how else to even say it. Like, they're evil. And the idea that a single man could come in and just, like it's pretty startling, actually. He canceled all of the programs that were funded in revenues amassed through the cap and trade program, exited the cap and trade program, canceled 758 green energy contracts. Like, this man should go to the Hague, right? Like, we should send Doug Ford to the Hague for this alone. Let's light a fire under all their butts. Justin Trudeau, the ultimate obstructionist drama queen. Yeah, liberals support these clowns. Yeah, I know, right? Like, what people are not absorbing the idea that liberals and conservatives are allies, right? They see a liberal flying a little pride flag and they go like, oh, the liberal's the way to go, right? Absolutely. Without completely realizing that the liberals and the conservatives will completely ally to ensure that that person who they're flying the pride flag for will just keep going to work for shittier conditions, right? Like, that's the whole thing. The liberals will fly a little pride flag and tell you to get to work, right? They don't. They're happy that you're gay and that you're a minority and that you have all these, like, LGBT, all that kind of stuff. They'll happily espouse all that kind of stuff as long as you show up to work on time. Show up to work, do all the work. We'll steal your surplus value and shoot Bezos into space. Pride flag, right? Liberals and conservatives are allies. Did I see the hacking of Epic servers? They host all kinds of right-wing websites and stored the CC and passwords in plain text. That's hilarious. Here you go, John. Look, but don't eat. Fuck you. Fuck you, guy. Fuck you. You fucking don't. I love ice cream. I'm lucky this way, actually. Like, I do miss cake, but ice cream is still there for me. Ah, good old ice cream. A true standby, a true stalwart. Just to remind you guys, Dan Trays is coming into the podcast. It's going to be a little bit different because he has to call me on the phone. And so he might be speaking through my speakerphone, which will come through the mic. And so I'm going to be asking you guys to let me know if that's actually working. And if it's not, then Dan and I are going to have to find a different way of doing it. Might have to reschedule if that's the case. We're trying to make it happen, and I really do want people to hear Dan's story because I think Dan is a really fascinating and interesting person, worth listening to. I mean, he experienced homelessness for 19 years of his life. I mean, that alone makes him somebody that we should be listening to. So I'm going to try to make it happen, but if it doesn't happen today, then we'll push it later, okay? Instead of cake, flourless tort, which is also super easy to make, yeah. Hey, Demand Better, how you doing? I hope you're having a great day too, dude. I hope things are going well. When I search your channel, even though I'm logged in, it doesn't give the full name as a suggestion, even though there's only one letter that shows. Yeah, of course. Of course. I've 100% been shadow banned. Are you kidding me? My name is the Canadian Commie. I have a communist thing in my maple leaf. I'm reading out loud documents that have already been banned by many social... of course I've been shadow banned, dude. The amount of growth that is occurring on this channel is coming from my own work, spreading it through Reddit and Twitter, and also word of mouth. You guys spreading it. Word of mouth is still the most effective way. So I encourage each and every one of you to tell everybody about everything. Demisexuals like myself do. What is a demisexual? What the heck is that? See, there's so many different types now. Sexual. Demisexual people only feel sexually attracted to somebody when they've been an emotional bond with the person. Yes, absolutely. No, but and absolutely that exists, but like it's there's so much that we've got to push through to get to this point. Don't you think this should be easier? Socialism and communism threaten capital. YouTube is a capitalist enterprise. Yeah, exactly. Which is why leftists don't want to take to the streets. Like the YouTube leftists are not taking to the streets because that threatens their business model. No difficulty on a Saturday night in a club or a bar, yeah. Problem, socio-political crisis on the verge of civil war. Solution, sex. Yeah. Quote me on this, man. For real. If the society, like there's this species of monkey that exists. I forget what they're called. Is it the bonobo? Anyway, when two males start to fight, right? Two male monkeys start to fight. A female just comes along and has sex with both of them, and the fight ends. I'm just like, yeah, like there are grander things to worry about than money and bombing some other civilization, right? Like the pursuit of sex is like, we call it basic, but I'm just like, what are you talking about basic? Like it's only called basic because it's so intrinsic to us, and it's so intrinsic to us that the idea that we're ignoring it is astounding. I think there's some remnants to the free love movement, the polyamory community. I think that's true. Hey, Nova Scotia, how you doing, bud? In the early 1980s, Time magazine came out with an article claiming that the sexual revolution was over. Propaganda or what? Yeah, for sure. Yeah. You're right. This demonization of sex is ridiculous. Well, it's nice that you said you're right. Oh. Ooh, it's nice. It's nice when somebody says I'm right. Not quite everyone. Asexuality is real. Yes. Of course. Like, and don't want to fall into a place where we are demonizing or excluding asexuals from the conversation as well, right? Like, they definitely exist. That's definitely part of the conversation. And those people deserve all the support and love that we can give them too. But asexuals are like a very small minority within the sexual conversation, right? So we shouldn't hyper focus. Don't get me wrong, I love sex. I just need to, yeah, and there's nothing wrong with that whatsoever. Like, I'm not saying otherwise, but it's just like, why are we erecting so many barriers, right? We erect a lot of barriers to go from point A to point B on this one. Would the decriminalization and destigmatization of sex work perhaps help the situation some? Yeah, I think so. Like, it's an interesting societal observation that sex work, or what's previously been called prostitution, is so heavily demonized, right? That we are willing, like, think about how odd this is. Throughout the 90s and early 2000s, there was a real elevation and a real glorification of the pimp, right? That if something was good, you could call it pimp. And that was supposed to be good. There was a show on TV called Pimp My Ride, Pimp My House, right? Pimping became synonymous with the accumulation of wealth, and it became glorified. And this idea that we simultaneously are elevating the pimp while denigrating the sex worker, like the prostitute, really gives you an insight into how we view sexual relationships and sex work in general. That we generally think, we think that the person actually doing the act is worthy of abuse, is worthy of enslavement, is worthy of manipulation and denigration, while the person who's doing all of that to secure his little harem of prostitutes should be elevated in our culture and actually admired, right? Like, that to me is some dark shit. Like, you get into the darkness of that. How we're supposed to worship the pimp while punishing the prostitute. Staggering that we would do this. And the idea that we create a situation in which these women can actually be their own bosses and have their own businesses, it seems we're working as hard as we can to ensure that cannot be the case. We are constantly trying to get the pimp back in the conversation. We are constantly trying to get it so that these women must subserviate themselves to a pimp in order to do the work that they are driven towards because of the structure of the system that we are in the first place. Like, it's very bleak. It's very dark when you get into like what's going on in sex work and our perception of it, which again is all tied up in this puritanical, like, so I want to take $200 and go have sex with a woman. Well, now I am considered, if I were to do this, I would be considered one of the like lowliest people on the planet, right? The denigration surrounding this act is really, really heightened. Nobody wants to know or be friends with or be a part of an organization that pays for sex when it's called literally the oldest profession, right? And when you stop and think about it, you're just like, wait, what's the problem here exactly? Like, what is actually the problem here? I've heard it like, you'll go and pay for a massage, but there's this, if you go the one step further, then suddenly it's like this huge problem and everything's like demeaning and dirty and dingy and filthy and you're a pervert, right? That's the weirdest statement, actually, that like, if you actually enjoy sex and want to enjoy sex with another person, you are a pervert. Excuse me? Like, what? Like, what? Like, that doesn't make sense to me at all. And so I think the decriminalization and destigmatization of sex work generally is a good idea, just for the safety of the women alone. But also, like, what's the problem here? Like, what's the fucking hang up? Like, and that's really what it comes down to, is that because we don't know anything about it, because we push it in the corner, because we don't talk about it, because we don't teach it, because it's, just abstain, right? Because of all of that. Well, then people who actually do pursue it and who do it, we fear them because we don't know anything about it, right? It's this fear that permeates the conversation that causes a lot of problems for us. And so it's a very deep issue because we're doing everything we can to not talk about it and to not pay attention. And the people who do talk about it have to face a lot of fucking bullshit. Like, a lot of fucking bullshit. Fewer people know how to communicate to people face to face, which is essential to sex. Yeah, I think that's true too, right? We've been very digitized. And there's a lot of mistrust in the society right now, right? Generally speaking. People don't trust one another. Like, 77% of Canadians say that Canada is fractured, right? Like, and when you have a society where there is no general sense of trust, well, then you're constantly needing to, like, reassure and break down existent barriers that exist for good reasons. Like, none of our institutions work to help us. We're constantly at odds with one another. We live in a highly competitive culture that basically says it's every man for themselves. And so when it comes time to actually pursuing the sexual drive, well, you're constantly faced up with these enormous hurdles that are in place on purpose, if you ask me. Sexuality is both social and intimately personal. If a priest or politician can invade our ideas and control the narrative and norms, they could control the people in a profound way. It's an old technique. Yeah. I think there's truth to that. A lack of communication and socialization is a big part, yeah. When the only sex ed is mainstream porn, it's going to lead to unhelpful ideas of sex. Absolutely, Tash. You're really hitting something there, if you ask me. That, like, we as a society, like, we obviously want to be talking about sex and engaging in sex, obviously, right? The existence of the pornography culture shows that that's the case. Like, it's, you got to be thick. You got to be thick to think that people don't want to engage in this. Like, we obviously do. But because, like, it's so we have this odd duality that's existing in our lives right now, right? Like, we spend most of our time in workplaces, and you cannot engage in sexual behavior in these environments at all. 0%. I have watched people get fired. I have watched people get demoted. I have been threatened with firing and demotion myself. If you engage in any sexual conversation, activity, if you linger too long with your eyes, you will be spoken with, you will be threatened with dismissal, and I have watched people be dismissed over it. So it is, when I say that there are hard lines, it is obvious that there are hard lines, right? That your work culture is a 0% sex environment, right? Not permitted whatsoever. And so you live in a society where there's this line that's been cut and it's dirty and dingy and you're perverted and you can lose your source of income over it. And then you have a flip side of that where there's this, like, fantasy world that you're engaging with digitally where literally anything goes. Literally anything goes. Like, that's not healthy. That is not healthy. That's like some bipolar disorder shit. It's not healthy to have this situation where there is a 0% sexual engagement and 100% sexual engagement in a digital sort of, like, masturbatorial, let's be straight up what it is, masturbatorial method, right? And so there's this longing desire to have these two forces actually meet, right? But how do you do that? And how do you intersect? And how do you negotiate that? And I think it's actually become very scary for women because women take a look at pornography and it's there, it exists. You literally type boobs in. You can't avoid it, right? And it if you're a woman that doesn't want to be so aggressively free with your sexuality, well, it's created this expectation almost, right? That, like, men who are engaging into the conversation are like, okay, we know that women are horny. Like, we know that they want to do this. But something like what Misty was saying, right? Like, I want to get to know this guy. I don't want to, like... So, in many ways, it's, like, increased the pressure, right? It's increased the pressure to actually put out, to actually engage in sexual acts. And I think lots of women are going like, okay, but can we slow this thing down? And men are being ratcheted up in the opposite direction. They want to speed everything up, right? Men want to be like... And there's no signals for how to navigate this. So it's become... So because of the sort of bipolar nature of how we're engaging with sex, because we've been funneled in this direction, because we definitely want to be engaging with sex, but we live in a society that refuses to allow us to do it in any meaningful way. So now here's this little digital nugget that's come out of fucking the internet, and, like, obviously we want to be doing it, but we just can't seem to be able to make these pieces fit. And so it's creating real negative outcomes in our society. Yeah, if we all had enough sex, who would want to fight a war? Exactly. Yeah, exactly. On the YouTube chat here, it defaults to top chat, which isn't all the chats that people put in. It decides somehow if you switch to live chat, it shows all the chats. Oh, yes. Yeah. Dougie Boy needs to go. Buck a Beer crowd needs to wake the heck up. They're not going to, right? And I don't actually like this conversation, like the wake the heck up. First of all, it's been taken by the right and turned into like woke culture, right? So they've taken it for themselves. But also, they are very awake. They know exactly what they're doing, right? It's time for us to stop pretending like these guys don't know what they're doing, right? Like, they know exactly what they're doing. They know that they are throwing people into the streets. They're aware of it. They know what they're voting for, right? Like, that's the harder conversation. It's not about them waking up. It's about us fighting back because they know what they're doing. They're aware of what they're doing. They want people to suffer. That's what they're voting for, right? The people, hey, we are starving, we could use some help. Conservative, no. Yeah, liberals, no. Black Lives Matter, exactly. I'm always curious what you guys are saying when you're retracting your messages, I'm always curious. What kind of crazy shit did Dash Me say? Crazy shit. Yeah, asexual people, demisexual, yeah. Being severely disabled in Canada ties me to the capitalist aid programs. I hope they don't mess it up. Dude, yeah, disability, we need to at least double. To me, doubling, if somebody doubled the amount of support that we give to our disabled here in Canada, I would think, oh, okay, that's like the scraping the bottom of the barrel, basic bare minimum, right? That means that the person that's doing that has basic sense, not even humanity, not even compassion or empathy, just basic sense, right? That I want to see disability services tripled here in Canada. It's pretty grotesque what we're doing. Like, it's pretty grotesque. Like, we give less support to the disabled than the Americans do. Like, that's brutal. Like, what's the saving grace that Canadians always fall back on? Well, at least we're better than America. Not when it comes to helping the disabled. When it comes to helping the disabled, we're worse than America. Like, so we don't even have that. Why do you think it's the most popular subject in media? It's happening whether Puritans demonize it or not. Nature over nurture. Yes, like, that's just it. Like, and we love it. Like, we love sex, guys. Like, it's just, and we can't help it. Like, we can't help it. Like, when a dude is standing in the street and a beautiful young lady walks by and they, like, turn and look, right? That moment is not intellectual. Like, it's not something that we are working through and being like, and then I shall turn and I shall look and I shall enjoy what I shall see. That's not how it works. It's literally your dick, right? It's literally your sexual organs directing the show. And it has the power to do this, which is why, you guys know my chakra system, right? Which is why in the chakra system, energy starts there. It doesn't start here, right? Doesn't start here. And if we had a better understanding as a species and as a people that energy originates where your sexual organs are, right? We would have a better understanding of what it is to be alive and be a human in the world, right? Because you can literally have your body taken over by this sexual impulse and just be like, in my view, it's a miracle it's not worse. Right? In my view, it's a miracle it's not worse than it is now. The means of production must be in the workers' hands. For sure, bud. For sure. All labor involves selling yourself. Corporations rent your mind for ideas. Your body does labor. You exchange your time for profit. Exactly. Justin Trudeau official schedule says he's in private meetings all day, but in reality he's on vacation with his family in Vancouver. He sucks at acting, can't even get today right. Well, it's kind of sad that he's calling a vacation with his family a private meeting, if you ask me. Hey, Vince, how you doing, bud? How you doing? I'm willing to give Trudeau a 1 because he legalized marijuana. Yeah, I'm willing to do 1. because of the legalization of marijuana. The legalization of marijuana is one of those things that, like, it's embarrassing that it is that we've gotten this low. Like, the standard is so low right now that we're literally like, a plant that literally just grows out of the ground of its own accord by itself that you can just pick and then smoke will make you feel a little goofy, got banned. Like, what? And the hemp that it produces is literally like a miracle fabric. It creates fabric, it creates building supplies, it does all kinds of shit, and we just like banned it. Like, if you don't know anything else about our society, you can know that that's the stupidest shit of life. And so the idea that we're going to give credit to a politician because he managed to de-ban a substance that should have never been, like, it'd be like banning roses. Like, what the fuck is wrong with you? I would give him a 1 if he expunged the records of people like he promised. Exactly. Oh, Vince, yeah, the job search. The job search itself is so depleting and so demoralizing. It's so demoralizing to even do the search. And then go in for the stupid interview where they ask you a bunch of dumbass questions that don't fucking matter at all. And then guess what? And then at the end of it, you got to work this fucking stupid job. So it's like, the whole thing is demoralizing. The whole thing is demoralizing. Yeah. Ugh, blah, blah, blah. Well, this has been a fun chat today. I didn't think today I'd be talking about sex as much as I am. I love talking about sex, guys. I do. I actually think that I'm being pretty self-censoring right now. So I don't want to go too much deeper on it because I'll start to really give some opinions. Yep, human beings really said, yeah, sure, we could be swimming naked in gorgeous lakes and laying in the sunshine and eating peaches under trees drinking wine all day, but let's create a class system and kill the planet instead. Spice things up a little. Yep. Anything related to think tanks? That's oddly specific, bud. It's oddly specific. Man, I don't know. There's a little part of me that thinks maybe I should get back into funeral services. I used to joke when I was in funeral services. I used to joke, man, this is a really great way to interact with the public. Yeah, my favorite part is that they don't talk back. I think it's interesting how sex and porn and sex in movies and shows are dramatically different. Well, because people who are in porn are actually like acrobatic actors. It really is important for people to understand this, that like, though nobody is having sex like this. Like, nobody has sex like they have sex in porn. Like, what they're doing in porn is very specifically a visual art that it like. And the women, it's mainly, well, the men too, though. Like, what they are doing is stuff that's like out of the Kama Sutra, right? Like that nobody is having sex this way. And that kind of speaks to, I think, the heightened anxiety and expectation that women have, because they don't really understand, I think, that women don't really understand that men don't really expect any of that. Like, we're not expecting women to contort themselves and to get into like this squat position and to do anything. Like, we don't expect that. That it's like I don't expect a guy who rides a motorcycle to also want to like ramp over 4 buses, right? Like, I don't expect that when we go dancing, you're gonna like do an amazing salsa tango thing, right? Like, it's that what porn is delivering is like it is an art form in and of itself. Like, and that's something that people don't think about or want to admit or any of that kind of stuff. That porn stars are like on the bottom of the list, right? In terms of being an entertainer or being an entertainment kind of thing. But like no, if a woman had sex with me the way that porn stars have sex, I would be like, what are you doing? I wouldn't tell them to stop, but I would definitely say, like, what the fuck is going on? Like, this is not what I expected whatsoever. And nobody says this, like, nobody talks about this, and so it creates a lot of anxiety, and it's another problem. It's another kind of barrier that exists that it puts pressure on the sexual moment in a manner that can, like, how do you overcome this? How do you convince people that, like, yeah, like, when we go to the dance club and go dancing on the dance floor, I don't expect us to have, like, a big fucking routine planned. I don't expect to be doing backflips and shit, right? And I think expecting that would be weird. But when we look at porn, there is that expectation that has been into our society, and it's causing a lot of problems because people don't understand that the people who are in porn are actors, and they are, like, they're doing choreography, right? That's choreographed, what they're doing. Right? Like, that's not what happens. That's not how we roll as people. I'm a terrible liar, so job interviews are like dancing backwards in 4-inch heels in lava. Oh yeah. I've stopped lying. I've stopped. I start, and you know what? I gotta tell you, I'm more successful in job interviews now because of it. Because I go in there and I'm like, yeah, this is who I am. This is what I do. If you want it, you get it. If you don't want it, then bye. Funeral services, it sounds interesting. It was interesting. It was interesting for the period of time that I was in there. I ended up leaving the industry because my boss was stealing from me and the rest of our employees, and I wouldn't let him. So he fired me for it. Yeah, 5 hours of work for the possibility of begging for something you don't want. Exactly. We need a federal jobs guarantee. The government should give everyone that wants a job, starting salary, $90K a year, and a UBI. I would be happy with $40K and still have savings and not worry about life. Yeah, come on, do a backflip. Yeah, exactly. You first, Dash Me. Precisely. Yeah. And it just, like, yeah, people don't get that, like, we just kind of want to cuddle. That's mainly what it's like. Like, it's very, like let's take the high energy that we see in porn and, like, distill it down. Like, it's much lower energy pursuit. Like, we like it, but I don't want you to have to do, like, half hour of stretches afterwards and then have, like, a come down routine afterwards, right? Like, it's not. I want the experience to be nice. I would like everyone to have a fine time and not have it be so aggressive. And if you're basing what's happening on what you're seeing in porn, then obviously there's problems that come up from that, right? Yeah, sexy cuddle. That's it, right? What is sex but a sexy cuddle, really, when you think about it? And it's just like, because, like, porn stars are playing to a camera. It is fundamentally a visual art, right? And they're aware of it and they know it, right? And there's a framing that happens. Like, I know way too much about theater and film and television not to understand that, like, what you're seeing is choreography. Like, it's extremely choreography. Like, and the expectation that it's like if you watch a sitcom, right? And you watch the sitcom and you see the sitcom family and and the sitcom family is the sitcom family, and then you think to yourself, well, why isn't my family so nice, and why don't we come to these nice conclusions and resolutions? And it's like, because that family has writers. You know, like, that family has writers, and that family has and everything you see is actually choreographed and blocked and, like, shot in order to make everybody look as good as possible, right? Like, there's a reason why your family is not the family you see on TV, and it's because your family doesn't have writers. There is something fun to putting on a whole production, though. Yes, of course, Duke. Of course, like the costumes and the fantasy of all that and all that kind of stuff. And it could be like a big project, right? No, and there's nothing wrong with any of that, certainly. But that's something that you would come to between each other, you know? It's not just something that would materialize or happen. That's why quickies are the best. Get it done, go on with your life. Oh, Ruth. There is that element too, isn't there? Just like one person wants to have sex, the other person doesn't, but at the same time, it's like, oh, okay, so you're just like, come on, let's go. Sex is a fucking great conversation to talk about, dude. I did not think I was going to be talking about it this much today. That's amazing. What else do I got? Oh, a good one from Existential Comics, right? The reason all workers deserve a living wage is because all workers have to be alive. Not very complex. Oh, man. Like, this speaks to a truth that I think I keep saying on this channel, and it's absolutely the case, which is that it's just going to get more obvious, right? That the capitalist death cult is intentionally making things more difficult than they have to be. That, like, the ideology that has been needed to be erected, right? The billions, the hundreds of billions of dollars that have been spent in order to convince people that they don't deserve food and they don't deserve shelter, right? Can be broken apart with a single sentence, right? The reason all workers deserve a living wage is because all workers have to be alive. And that's it. That's literally like 50 years of billionaire-funded propaganda and ideology smashed apart in a sentence. And it's going to get that easy and that obvious that eventually the capitalist death cult will be so bereft of any credibility or any desire to improve anything that even the most completely gullible, completely bought in sycophant will be able to see it for what it is, right? And I'm really not looking forward to the Americans starting to bomb Chinese assets. I'm not looking forward to it at all. But it is going to be a moment when we're going to be able to look at these people who are attempting to defend capitalism with a kind of grotesque look. Like, you're defending the Nazis, essentially. Like, that is essentially what you're defending at this stage if you're defending capitalism. Like, you are defending Nazism. Like, that the war of aggression that the United States is going to embark on, if you haven't bought into this idea already with the invasions in the Middle East, which are all wars of aggression, on the same scale as the Nazis invading their neighbors, right? But the war that they're going to embark on against China, like, we're talking about like an enormous death cult that simply does not value or care about life, that they are following the call to the void, and that the men and women that are going to die in the military conflagration, especially on the American side, are doing so because they want to commit suicide. And this is the way that they've chosen to do it, right? That they are just throwing themselves into a conflict in order to end the misery that is their lives. That seems to be the only argument to continue forward. Like, they're not doing it for glory. There's no glory there. They're not doing it for the future of their own civilization. It's going to be a complete disaster for America. They're not doing it to improve their own life because they die doing it, right? They're not doing it for any of that. So what's left? Like, what's left? And the only thing that's left that seems to make any sense to me is that these people want to commit suicide. They're just choosing to do it this way, right? It's like how some people suicide by cop, right? You charge a cop with a weapon and the guy guns you down, right? And police forces have done studies on this where they're like, why does this happen? Like, obviously this guy knows that he's going to get gunned down. And their conclusion from the studies that they've done is that some people commit suicide this way. They charge police officers and they know they're going to get gunned down, right? And I think that there are American soldiers and American military personnel that are caught in the same dynamic. They know they're going to die. They're well aware of it. And they know that what they're doing is completely illegitimate. They know that what they're doing is morally abhorrent, but they just choose to die. And they're choosing to die this way. The main reason that capitalists eventually gave into welfare was because it was cheaper than a police state versus military labor and guaranteed consumer demand even in recession. Exactly. Yeah. Well, and let's be really straightforward, demand better. The main reason that capitalists eventually gave into welfare was because the halls of power were surrounded. That's really what it was. That all of this, like, oh, we gave into welfare because it was cheaper than the alternative, all that kind of stuff, that's just like retro stuff. That's stuff that the capitalists say in hindsight. That's just what they're saying in hindsight, right? That the real reason the capitalists capitulated is because there were knives at their throats. Like, that's the truth. And like, the capitalists don't have a moral core or a moral center. They can't be reasonable. They can't be rational, right? So it's not like they looked and were like, oh, well, you know what they are saying about the welfare system? It will be cheaper than if we wanted to do this and like a min-max. No, there was a knife at their throat. We were saying to them, do this or you are gone. And so they capitulated. And then after the fact, they look back and go, well, you know, it is this, that, and the other. So that they can attempt to pretend like they have any credibility in the first place, which they don't. And this flows into my larger point about the mistakes that the socialists and communists made with the New Deal. And the mistake that the communists and socialists made was that they allowed the means of production to remain in the hands of the capitalists. That was the big mistake. And it's a mistake that we should not duplicate. That when it comes time, right, because the capitalists will capitulate everything, right? They will capitulate everything except the means of production. And when it comes down to it, we need to take the means of production away from them because the capitalists have proven their desire and their willingness to dismantle any concessions that they give using the means of production to achieve it. So they can't be trusted. They are sociopaths. Like, they are vampiric sociopaths. And they need to be removed from the society. Like, they cannot have control of the means of production anymore. Today's discussion about the birds and the bees should put your channel subscription count to over 1,000 by tomorrow. Yeah, we'll see about that, DM. It's nice to dream, isn't it? It's nice to dream. I'll just be happy if I actually hit the 700, honestly. The state realized that every few years the capitalists create a recession to discipline labor, starve them out, and that they needed a pressure gauge to reduce the number of angry workers. I mean, that's kind of classic liberalism, right? That liberalism exists in order to defend the system of capital. And again, like, we shouldn't tolerate, well, and it's no longer even doing that, right? Like, that the liberals now are not even interested in doing in this pressure valve anymore, right? Like, the Trudeau administration certainly isn't. Neither is the Biden administration, right? Neither of them are actually interested in creating any pressure release so that the populace can live a rational, reasonable subsistence. So, like, we're literally being ruled by far-right demagogues. Like, Joe Biden, in terms of any political compass you want to look at, is essentially a far-right ruler, right? And Justin Trudeau is essentially the same. He exists not only on the right, but on the far right. He's probably further to the right than Stephen Harper was. Yeah, then they can cull the militant workers while keeping most workers out of the fight. Yeah. Well, they have all kinds of tactics and strategies for manipulating people and maintaining the system of power, right? And to them, like, take a look at what happened with the Amazon vote to unionize in Alabama, right? That it came down not unionize, but then it got turned over, and Amazon was deemed guilty of manipulating the results enough so that the election was considered fraudulent and thrown out. And so now they're reorganizing to do it again. But that's a win for Amazon. And there's no punishment for there's no punishment for breaking the rules, right? Like they don't have to pay a fine. They don't have to do anything, right? So what are they doing? They're stalling. And at this stage in the game, when we are living in a world that is like post-coup, right? We live in a world that's dominated by corporations, right? The capitalist coup has been completed. Now their objective is to stall as best as they can while simultaneously dismantling the democratic institutions that are the only legitimized venue to create reform. And once they're done with the democratic institutions, then they can just rule the way that feudal kings ruled. And then truly we will only have actual revolt. That's the only thing left for us to do. I think we should get there already. I think we should be already doing it, but I seem to be on the fringes currently. Maybe in 5 years' time. Caps have short memories and have drunk the neoliberal Kool-Aid, so they attack obviously good things like welfare. Demand better. I really think you do need to just accept. Like, I like you, bud, and I like your channel and I like what you're doing, but I think you really do need to accept that these guys are sociopaths. Like, I'm not being hyperbolic about that shit, dude. Like, I'm not saying it to get likes. Like, I'm not saying it so that people will be like, oh, wow, he's got a perspective that's different from anybody else. I'm saying it because it's the truth. Because once you attain a certain level of wealth, you lose the capacity to have compassion and empathy. That's the science. That's the science. It's not a hyperbolic statement. It's nothing like that. These guys are attacking welfare because it gives them pleasure. Because it is enjoyable for them to cause people suffering. That's the reason they're doing it. They're not dismantling it for any other reason. They're not sitting there saying like, oh, well, there's this ideological, all that kind of stuff. That's just the lie they're telling. What they want to do is murder and hurt as many people as they can because it gives them pleasure. That's the situation. That's where we're at. They're psychopaths. Yeah, many of them. The whitest, most sadistic cream rises to the top, and it's difficult to maintain that position. It's difficult to stay aware and stay within the wheelhouse of understanding that what you're dealing with is a psychopath and a sociopath, that is what you're dealing with, because no one wants to believe it. No one wants to believe this, that you are actually, in fact, ruled by nightmare creatures who get pleasure from the suffering of others. For God's sakes, the Jeffrey Epstein scandal alone should prove this to people. Like, I don't understand how you walk away from the Jeffrey Epstein scandal thinking like, oh yeah, these guys, maybe they do some bad things, but they're not complete sociopaths. Yeah, they're raping little children. Like, that's what happened at Jeffrey Epstein. Donald Trump went there. Bill Clinton went there. Bill Gates went there. We have the manifests. We know, right? Like, these people are like at bare minimum, child rapists. Bare minimum. That's like the bottom floor. So like, this is what we're talking about. This is why we're organizing. Because these guys are not going to help us. They're not interested in any of that. They're not interested in improving the society. These people are psychopaths. They're interested in getting pleasure for themselves by spreading misery into the society. That's what they want. So we need to surround the halls of power. We need to take away the means of production from these overt, obvious psychopaths. And we need to attempt to build a society that excludes them completely. Oh yeah, have you seen these funny interviews of Bill Gates being asked about Epstein? Yeah, and Bill Gates is all saying like, what's the stupid grift that he's running? He's saying, oh, I was trying to get him involved in an investment project. I didn't understand what he was doing. Oh yeah, all that kind of like, think about how fucking stupid and gullible you must be to actually listen to Bill Gates make the claim that, oh, I didn't understand what Jeffrey Epstein was up to. I didn't really understand what when he is a multi-billionaire. He obviously has a PR team. He obviously has people around him who exist exclusively to inform him about who Jeffrey Epstein is. When Bill Gates was talking to Jeffrey Epstein, Epstein had already done time for having sex with little girls. He had already done time. Like, this is what's disgraceful about the Epstein story. Epstein had already been arrested once, put on trial, and found guilty of child sex trafficking. He did 2 years, right? Because they protected him, because they find people like Epstein useful, because the goal is to hurt people. And so Epstein had already been charged as a child sex trafficker and a pedophile. He had already done jail time about it. And so when Bill Gates is talking to him and saying, oh, hey, I was just talking to Epstein because for an investment thing, all that kind of stuff. First of all, Bill Gates is one of the richest men in the world. He doesn't need someone like Epstein. He doesn't need his money, right? Second of all, you already know that he's a child sex trafficker, dude. Why are you trying to get his money? So you've got to be like a complete gullible rube. And the win here with Bill Gates is the fact that he feels he needs to address it, right? So he's being threatened. He feels the heat. He understands that people are coming for him on this issue. And I hope people do. Because we shouldn't be ruled by pedophilic sex child rapists. Very straightforward. I find it kind of odd that I need to say it out loud. That maybe the wealthiest people and the most powerful people in the society shouldn't be child rapists. Like, maybe that should be pretty straightforward and obvious for everyone. But apparently it has to be said. Gates 100% knew about it. Same as Schumer in the U.S., Trump and Clinton's. It's so gross. Why do you think they go there? That's why they're going there. Really gross that he's so into vaccine development too. Like, out of everyone that could be into vaccine development, does it have to be Bill Gates? Yeah, and Gates in terms of the vaccine, I think it was Pfizer, could have been Moderna. One of them. There was one corporation that was actually going to release its data for free, so that places like India, Africa, South America could actually get access to the vaccine. And at the very least, start to produce it for themselves, right? To increase production, all of this kind of stuff. And it was Bill Gates who talked them out of it, right? So Bill Gates is instrumental in ensuring that the vaccine does not spread into the rest of the world. He is instrumental in ensuring the continued mutation and growth of the COVID crisis. And yeah, he's absolutely evil. Hello?
Hey, how you doing?
Is this Dan?
Yes, it is.
Okay, so Dan, we are doing this a little oddly, so I hope that this is actually going to work. Everybody on the chat, this is Dan Trays. Dan, why don't you just tell us who you are? What you did recently in March in Oshawa. Hopefully this actually works. Hopefully we can actually hear you, Dan.
Can you hear me nice and clear, guys?
Well, we'll see. How about you tell us who you are and what's going on?
Yeah, so my name's Dan. I'm on last Thursday, actually, I'm with a group called Fight for Your Rights Disability Canada, FYR, and what we do is on Facebook there provide a platform for those on ODSPOW with disabilities in Canada. And last Thursday, we had a little walk to Oshawa to raise some awareness about the issues. We had people across Canada join us, and so we're just trying to get the word out there and try to help people through some tough times.
Now, Dan, recently, I feel you're such a humble guy, buddy. Like you did a walk between Toronto and Oshawa. How long was that walk, and how do you think that went for you?
It started off great, actually. The walk it was approximately 60 kilometers, but I did get a little rerouted. I ended up on Rosslyn Road when I shouldn't have been, which is a few blocks away. But anyways, the purpose of doing it, as I said, was just to raise awareness. Last month, I actually met with the mayor of Oshawa, Dan Carter, who's like one of the only GTA mayors that's actually building housing and supportive housing for homeless individuals, with drug issues or some mental health problems, and providing them with some support. So we're just trying to bring some awareness to that. And the walk was long; it hurt, but I think it brought the awareness that we need, and it's a good start. And that's about it for that.
How long did it take you to recover from that walk, Dan? I know that the longest I've ever walked in a single day is 36 kilometers, and that took me a couple of days to recover from. So you're walking 60 kilometers. How'd that go?
It actually, I got to be PJ, eh? No, I don't. It actually sucks shit. my body was in pain until Monday.
Oh, yeah.
But I also got to remember that, I'm 43 years old now. I'm not 20 anymore. And, it's not like I go out and do 10 hours of exercise every day. Mm-hmm. I'm just your average guy. And, walking is one of the things I like to do. But, it was about 3-4 days. Feeling fine now. And also along the way, we were actually also able to raise a little bit of money for some children's groups out in Scarborough there.
Oh, that's so wonderful to hear, Dan. Yeah. I'm so glad that manifested in a real tangible way for you. And Dan, I want to get talking to you because I have only had like a couple of brief conversations with you, and it seems to me that a person like yourself, you have experienced 19 years of homelessness.
Yeah, absolutely. So from 97 until 2016, I was floating around. So I was in and out of shelters, couch surfing. I did the shelters from 2003 till about 2009. And then I was in what's known as temporary housing. For those that don't know, they usually put you in a room in some crack house somewhere, and they let you sit there until you're actually accepted for housing. Thank God in 2016 I actually got housing, and then stuff just took off from there. It just happened to be in the area of my future employer, who was Councillor Paul Ainsley. I was a special assistant at Toronto City Council. Now, for the past year, I've just been doing this type of work in the community, trying to get the word out there. And anybody that needs help, we try to help out the best way we can.
So, Dan, because of your experience with homelessness and because of the experience of what has happened, I feel like your perspective is invaluable here. Why do you think 19 years is a long time, bud? Like, that's a long time to be part of a homelessness system and to be part of a thing without having any kind of amelioration towards that. Why do you think that this is the case? What's your perspective on that?
Well, to be totally honest with you, I don't know what the hell amelioration means.
Resolving the problem, solving the problem, right? Finding a solution.
Yes, the situation for me, pretty simple, was that I always did have a supporting family, but, I just went on my own road, right? So I just sort of got lost within the system. I actually did apply for housing way back in 2005 while I was a resident at Dixon Hall Schoolhouse Shelter. And what happened was at that time is that the lady taking care of the housing actually took leave to take treatment for cancer.
Oh, wow.
And she never ended up coming back. So the letters that I was getting accepted into housing for were getting returned to sender by somebody.
Oh, God.
So that's what dragged me along for a couple more years until I figured out what was going on. To be perfectly frank with you, I believe that the situation is what I've seen all the way back to 1997. It's just a fact of we were more, as homeless people, we were more of a factory product than we were people. And what happened over the last 20, 30 years, ever since back in the Mike Harris days, as everybody knows, the programs were cut in half. And unfortunately, over the years, the programs weren't brought back, but a manager to manage a manager to manage a manager was brought in. So there's a reason we have a housing waiting list in Toronto of over 100,000 people, and it's the same way it was 10 years ago. Because it's more about the business than it is about taking care of the actual people. Because as you just stated, if that were the case, I wouldn't have been on assistance for 19, 20 years. I wouldn't have been homeless for 19 years. And people wouldn't be dying on our streets.
And Dan, you're touching on something that I think lots of people don't really think about when they think about homelessness. And it's in fact, it's something that I myself am beginning to just beginning my awareness of, which is homelessness and poverty as a business. That it seems that the systems that we have in place are not there to resolve homelessness or poverty. They're there to profit or benefit from homelessness or poverty. Can you perhaps speak a little bit more and maybe illuminate that a little better for us?
Okay, like depending on who you are speaking with, the numbers are almost accurate, but depending on who you're speaking with. So for example, if you run into and I don't know if it's changed over the last year or two, so if it has, please forgive me, but if you actually went into a shelter to book a bed, you have to sign what's called a pink sheet. And what that pink sheet does is give that remuneration, or whatever word you want to use, back to that particular service provider from the city.
Right.
So if they're, at the time when I was in the shelters, it was somewhere around $85 per person per night. So if you do the math on it, it's like $2, $3, $4, and maybe up to $6,000 now. So whereas you could take that money, put it into a little bit of service that provide the service for the people, as well as give them a home to get better integrated with, say, family or a job or mental health services or physical health services for a doctor. But the city and the province, unfortunately, when we amalgamated way back when, everything was handed down from the province to the city. And the city just, they couldn't keep up. Mm-hmm. And somewhere along the lines, they just forgot about the people that were homeless. And it just doesn't make, we need shelters for people that are on the streets. There are certain people on the streets that are just never going to come off the streets. Mm-hmm. But in order to have successful transition, you have to have the services there for the different issues. Mm-hmm. And if you don't, it's never going to work.
So it sounds to me like the system that's in place currently is actually incentivized to maintain a system of homelessness. That the shelters and the systems that are if suddenly homelessness was to be eradicated, then those systems could not be funded because they rely on homeless people to get their funding in the first place.
Exactly. It's sort of similar, and I don't want to touch on this subject because I don't really know a lot about it, but I'm just using it as an analogy. It's sort of similar to, if you remember a few years ago when the weed was not legalized yet, and all the police were doing were going in and busting the weed places, but you were allowed to shoot up heroin in a park.
Yeah.
And I explain this to people is that the reason that happens, for many other reasons, but one of the main reasons that happens is because when you shoot up heroin in a park, you need a nurse, you need security guards, you need staff members that can be there to watch for the people, to provide naloxone or what have you, services that they need. But when you smoke a joint, all you need is a bag of chips. So that's why these places were getting busted, because they couldn't do nothing about it. Now all of a sudden, weed's the best. We're all great. We got 50 stores on each block, and everything's gravy, right?
Yeah, exactly.
That's exactly the reason.
Now, first of all, I just want to read some of the statements that are being made in the chat here. We got Misty saying, Dan, you are a shining example of a person. I'm so proud and grateful for what you've done. Beautiful sentiment coming from Misty. And then DM, one of the regular here, is saying, it is cheaper to solve poverty with a UBI, a basic income, than it is to deal with secondary expenses. Do you have an opinion or position on a basic income, Dan?
If you had have asked me before, I would have been confused and not known what to answer. But you asked me during COVID times, and now I'm thinking a universal basic income, sure, it would work, with regards to the secondary services comment, that's hard because there's so many different issues. So there's so many different singular issues. Like one person might be this, one person might have this, and one person might need this. And so how do you accommodate all of them at once without like everybody working together? And I find too, in my previous work at some issues at council and such, there are people that are more worried and more intent on keeping the contracts and keeping the jobs going for the next 2-3 years as opposed to just fixing the problem.
Yeah.
So personally, I don't know. If I had a magic wand, I'd wave it, right? But I don't think there's any one right answer right now other than working together and not putting the pressure on them in the sense of saying like, fuck you and off with your heads and I want your job, Doug, and I want your job. It is what it is. Let's deal with it now. Work together, no matter what our opinions are on each thing, and something's got to give.
That's a very humble approach, Dan. I feel like what I encounter more on the regular is more of the off with their heads sort of approach, and you're here encouraging us, saying no, we should work together and we should attempt to find solutions. Do you feel, because I feel like you interact closer to the power structure than the rest of us do. Do you feel like there is a genuine good faith attempt by the people you encounter in the power structure to attempt to resolve this issue?
So the people that I worked with directly, and I'm not just blowing smoke up their ass, they know me, they know I'll call them out if I need to, but the people that I worked with directly were the absolute greatest bunch of people I ever met in my life, other than my family, of course.
Very nice.
I mean, I worked with Councillor Paul Ainsley, who has a great chief of staff, Antoinette DeNoble, one of the best in the business, and every single worker there in that office were genuinely giving their 100% effort to fix whatever is, whether it was NLS issues, whether it was housing issues or parking issues. We generally worked hard, and that's why I liked working with them. But then it got to the point where I was receiving calls, and I was trying to deal with them on a more broader spectrum, say with the mayor's office, say with the PMO, say with down at Parliament, Queen's Park there, sorry. Mm-hmm. And something just wasn't clicking. And the way I explain it to people is real simple. I'm not a party guy. I don't follow any one party. I go with ideas and such. Mm-hmm. But the way I explain it is simple. We got a PC provincial government, mm-hmm. and we have a federal Liberal government. And we have a mismatch here in Toronto of councillors that are for NDP, PC, Green, Liberal, everybody. If it's not one, it's never going to work. Where's the TTC subways promised 30 years ago in Scarborough? Where is all the housing going to be eliminated by such and such a year? Where's the downtown relief line talked about in the year 2005 or whatever it was?
So, Dan, what you're talking about seems to be that there is like a calcification or a constipation within the power structure where there seems to be an inability for any action, let alone for disability or homelessness, but basic things like increasing transit systems and things like this. Where do you think that inaction, where do you think, what is gumming up the works? What is causing problems for the power structure to be able to respond rationally to these necessities?
My only honest answer would be a total power trip. I'll give the example I can give you is that I actually am a 3-time candidate for Toronto City Council.
Excellent.
And the last time I tried to attempt to run, I had a bunch of people blowing smoke up my ass. Right, as you know, it happened.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, you'd be great. Oh yeah, talk for our community. Oh yeah. When it came time, when push came to shove, every single one of them said the same thing. Sorry, Dan, we can't help you. We got to keep the machine going. Mm-hmm. Sorry, Dan, we can't help you. We got to keep the machine going. And even though I appreciated their honesty, that's how I knew it was time for me to check out. That's how I knew it was sayonara. It's been a blast. Thanks for the experience. I'm going to do my thing.
So, Dan, because of all of this, what do you see? Do you have a kind of larger critique about where we may be heading, or what you think may occur in the future as we continue to not act on these very important issues?
It's a tough call again because it's so many issues. I mean, with regards to say housing, for example, there's always going to be another homeless person. So I don't understand why they don't fix it first and then take it from there. So there's always going to be more problems. But if you fix the problem at first, you don't have to worry about it afterwards. You'll know what you're getting into, and you can take it from there. I don't know what all your guys' beliefs are, but I'm a firm believer, and if somebody hates me for this comment, so be it. But if you give people housing, and I'm only speaking from experience, but if you give people the housing and that stepping stone to gain the other tools that they might need to succeed, that's the best thing you can do. If I never got housed in 2016, we're not having this conversation right now.
Thank you for your honesty on that point, Dan. And I feel like what you have just said there, I don't think you need to preface that. I don't think that's a very controversial position, honestly. Like places like Finland, for example, have done exactly what you're suggesting. They're just housing the homeless first. No means test, no nothing. Just saying, you're homeless, here's a house. And they're having great success with it. And again, this kind of takes me back to my question of, well, if other nations and other places are succeeding with these pretty straightforward solutions, in my view, well, why can't we?
I mean, for people, the first mistake these governments make here, I'll give you just an example. I don't mean to pick on him, Mr. Tory. He gets on TV and he says affordable housing is going to help the people in the encampments.
Right.
How the fuck is a $3,000 a month apartment going to help somebody in an encampment? So that's the first mistake, right? They got to clarify the difference between affordable housing and stuff like supportive housing. Like they're two totally different things. But the general public sits there and watches City TV or Global TV or whatever mass production they want to watch, and they go, oh yeah, affordable housing, okay, we're going to help the homeless. Don't worry, problem solved. Next.
Right.
And it just keeps going and going and going. And that's why I know people that are still down there on the streets right now, lucky that they're alive, 30 years later that I first stepped foot down there on those streets. And they're still there.
Wow. They're
still there slinging that stem. They're still there walking around talking to the clouds without anybody giving them any support or help whatsoever. And to me, that's disgusting. And I'm getting straight pissed off with all my friends getting beat up in parks and stuff.
Yeah.
Just for the simple fact that they're sitting there and they have nowhere else to go. Well, the next day you're going to paint circles for other people. Like, where are we?
Yeah. Well, and it gets especially bad when you realize that the amount of money that the Tory administration spent on those police forces in order to clear the encampments, it was something like $30,000 per person that they cleared from the encampments in order to do it. Do you think we could use $30,000 to help the homeless people in the first place?
I think that would go a hell of a long way, and yeah. I also know that if they had gave me 50, I would have cleared the whole thing myself, like through talk and dialogue.
Well,
that's what it's all about.
Absolutely, it is all about talk and dialogue. And what? Let's talk about this moment, Dan, because I am still kind of, I have my own thoughts, but I'm a bit confused about why those encampments were cleared in the first place. That I don't believe this statement of health and safety that came out of the Tory administration. Do you have a perspective on why this occurred in the first place?
Does it got to be PG?
No. We are not an adult for this is a late night show.
I think it was just a pure power trip and utter bullshit. So the first one, somebody can correct me if I'm wrong, but the one that happened at, I believe it was Alexandra Park. Wasn't there a movie set that went up the very next day?
Yeah, very next day. I think you're right, Andrew. It was for all of you who, I know a little bit about this because I did some research. It was Why the Last Man. It was the last day of shooting for the show that's coming on Netflix, Why the Last Man. I agree with you on this. I think that they cleared that encampment specifically for that film crew.
Trinity Bellwoods was for all the people that have their little drinks of wine in the park. Because if you notice, circles painted for people, and how many people were there when those circles were painted? Hundreds?
Yeah.
How many homeless people were there?
Yeah.
They weren't allowed, but those people were. And you painted circles to separate. Why didn't you paint circles for the homeless people? Like, this is not rocket science or, physics or something. It's a power trip, and you also, like I said, you got different governments going head to head, and okay, we'll provide for this, we'll provide for that, and now you got a temporary police chief. And I don't even know that you can even totally blame the police. Like personally, they get their orders from the mayor, do they not? And the police board.
There's a bit. What's interesting about that point is that there's a bit of buck passing happening in the conversation. That the councillors are saying that they don't direct the police forces, and the mayor is saying that they don't direct the police forces, and then you've got the chief saying, no, we take our orders from the politicians. So it seems like there's a lot of obfuscation happening in this particular moment, in this particular conversation. But yes, ultimately, like, if the mayor's office and the council said of the police forces, you must act in such a way, they would be beholden to that. Like, that's how the power structure works.
And like I said, there's the mayor sitting on the police board, and you got a couple of city councilors up there. And the person that was the former police board chair was running for politics they're all a circle. They're all a circle.
Yeah.
And if your name's not a certain last name, or if you haven't been around city council and the provincial legislature for the past 35 years, like some of them, you're never, it's never going to change. And we're always going to have the same problem. Do you notice that, okay, with housing, who did they bring back to take care of the housing, what did they call it, task force or transition team back in the day? They took back Art Ableton.
Interesting.
He was the friggin' mayor of the old city of York back in what year, 1972?
Okay.
How's that going to fix housing in 2021 or 2019 or whenever it was he was brought in? If you go look at the police budget from, say, 2013, you'll see that between 60 and 70% of the budget is all spent on staff. None of it, I think it was 20% spent on programs, and the rest was miscellaneous.
Right.
So if you got 60% or 70% on staff and nothing going to the programs, what's going to happen?
Yeah.
Programs fail.
Yeah. It's just a way to funnel public money into kind of your own pockets.
Yeah, and truth be told, I've offered my services to the city to try to help out with a couple of issues that are going on, because I'm sick and tired of seeing my friends die or get beat up on the street. And I've offered the services free of charge to help with the homeless issues, the housing, all ODSP and OW. Not even a phone call.
I tend to when I hear stories like this, Dan, the more you listen to me and the more you talk to me, the more you're going to see that I am a very meta, big picture sort of a fellow. And when I hear these stories, it makes me continue to think that there is some kind of larger narrative or larger plan going on, where why wouldn't the powerful or people be at the very least asking for volunteer support from their communities? Why wouldn't they be leaning on people such as yourself who are trying to get involved, who are trying to help the situation as best as they can? And the
simple answer to that is simple. Is because they can deal with the Dan Trays yelling at them. They can't deal with the whole local Koopy number 412545259 yelling at them.
Right.
So that's the only reason. They fix the problem, those jobs go away. Those jobs go away, those people yell at them.
Right. And so it seems like what they're faced against is, and we seem to keep circling back onto this point, which is that it seems as though there needs to be some kind of reform to the system itself. That it isn't enough simply to increase their funding or to increase staffing or to create more jobs or any of these sort of classic talking points that we get. That we are coming to a point where the system itself needs to be reformed.
Well, there was talk actually around the Ward 22 by-election there in January, and I believe if somebody could correct me on the dates if I'm wrong, but there was talk about bringing in the ranked ballot system in 2026.
Oh, interesting.
So I don't know if that's still going through and on what level they were doing it. They had ranked ballots, people from all over the province, the city, and the country, like all over, doing little surveys. They do it at each by-election or election that they have because they want to see who they should support or not. But yeah, that was supposed to be coming into effect in the city here actually in 2026. And again, I haven't touched up on it since probably about March or April, so I'm unsure the status of that. But
well, and
other than that...
So pivoting away from the power structure then, why do you think, Dan, it seems as though that there isn't a big upswell coming from the communities and coming from the people themselves? Why do you think that would be the case?
With regard to
seeking reform or helping the homeless or doing any of this kind of stuff, there doesn't seem to be a big public movement in order to force any kind of meaningful change or any support for these people coming from the populace itself.
Well, see, for example, like that's what we're trying to do with our Facebook site there, right? So we get everybody there at FYR and just talk to people, and if we have to guide people towards certain individuals or certain services for them, we help them out. But point blank, it's just a personal opinion. But I sit here and I watch the news every day, and I listen to people such as yourself and other people on various platforms, and I just think people talk, and then they hear the rhetoric that comes out of these politicians' mouths and out of these, I don't know how everybody category, mainstream media people, and they just drink it. I don't want to use that term everybody's using, but they suck it up. And then they're just like, okay, well, I don't have to go do it because somebody else will. There'll be 20 others. And that's just not how it works. We need, like you said, we need everybody to stand up and say something. And again, we don't need to fight because you use your words and you show them where they're wrong. And as long as there's not only two people, but there's a couple dozen or 100, make your voice heard. Because if you're not going to get up and make your voice heard, nothing's going to happen. It's not just going to magically happen like Lucky Charms,
That's right. Now, so Dan, as we're getting to the end of the conversation, is there anything you'd like to say to the chat? Anything you'd just like to send into the atmosphere? Let people know what's going on, or anything of that matter.
Well, I'd just like to say, everybody, thanks for listening tonight. Thanks for last Thursday also. Like I said, we got support all over the country. If anybody has any disability issues or issues pertaining to such, you can get a hold of us at Fight for Your Rights Disability Canada on Facebook. I can be found at DJT624 on Twitter. And just stand up and speak up. And one encouraging thing I would like to say too that might just work, pick an issue. Just pick one issue and then just roll with it. Give it heavy. Because if all of us picked one issue and say 50 of us got our one issue done, that's 50 issues instead of 50 of us fighting for one and getting nothing.
All right, Dan. Thank you for your words. Thank you for your work, Dan. Thank you for your hopeful messaging. I know I appreciate it, and I know the people in the chat appreciate it as well. And most importantly, Dan, thank you for your time tonight.
Yeah, no, anytime, guys. Have a good one, eh?
You too, Dan. Keep up the good fight.
Thanks, you too, brother.
So that was Dan Trays, Fight for Your Rights, Disability Canada. I've shared the website. I believe I did that. Did I do that? Yes, I did. Here's the man right here. And Dan has guts, absolutely. You know what I admire about a man like Dan? Dan has experienced. He has truly experienced the homelessness. Like he has gone through it. He has waded through it, and he's come out the other side. And in my estimation, a very humble, honest, and ultimately hopeful person who that's the beautiful thing about talking to a man like Dan is that you see how even after that the hardship and the difficulty hasn't made him bitter, that he understands that there is things to do, that there is a fight to push forward. And he still believes that it can be done just through conversation, communication, discussion, which I don't necessarily know if that is the case any longer, but it's wonderful that a person such as Dan, I mean, 19 years of homelessness is a long time. That is an amazing, amazing, amazing life story, and hopefully Dan is right. Hopefully we can just come together, continue speaking with one another with compassion and empathy, and find ways to resolve the issues that are in front of us. I think, and I do think his estimation of why people are not becoming active is true. That the what he called the mainstream media, but what I call the corporate media, does a good job diffusing the anger and diffusing the desire to do something in the populace. That there are wealthy people in the power structure, and what we were talking about right before that interview, right? That there are wealthy people in the society who are working to ensure people like Dan don't achieve their goals, right? That's and that the system itself that exists now is incentivized to maintain the system of homelessness. That maintenance of the system of homelessness is important to their bottom line. Need more people like him in leadership roles so that they can have some actual accurate representation for people who are less fortunate? Exactly. Yeah, and awesome message from him at the end there. Absolutely. Absolutely. And this is really, these are the types of people who I want to bring on and be talking to, because these people here are the people who have lived the life, who have lived the experience, who have lived what is happening in Canada, and to know that and the thing that really hits me, the thing that really, really hits me about that conversation, like, is the humility, is the humility. That's really touching my heart right now, that I don't know of myself that I would go through an experience like that and come out the other side with humility. I don't know that I would, for myself, be able to stay away from the anger or the bitterness or any of that kind of thing. And so it's quite inspiring. It's quite inspiring, and speaks to the resilience of the human spirit, I think. That and yes, I will bring on Christopher. Christopher works with FYR Disability Canada as well. And I've got that website up here. I've shared that in the chat as well. Important for all of us to be involved, to know what's going on. And hopefully, we're a bit late in the game. What the hell? Let's do it. We all know. Oh, DM, you're the one that's always angling on it, aren't you? Yes, I didn't do the song today. I didn't do it today. I should have. All right. I did this without the capo. I'm going to try this on capo 3 today, guys. That means we're going up a little bit higher than I normally go. But I did it the other day without the capo, and I thought it was quite low. So if this is a catastrophe, then so be it, right? Hey, Mystic, you're just in time for the song. As you guys know, right, I call this the Care Bear stare against neoliberal capitalism. This is Antarctica is covered in ice. Got asked a question by my niece who's 5 years old. What's the world gonna be like when I'm grown? I looked up to the crimson smoke-filled sky. I thought, what's the harm in telling one more lie? I said, everybody's safe, no one's living in the streets. You never need to worry if you're gonna get to eat. Antarctica is covered in ice, and everybody's happy, and wouldn't that be nice? The burning sun won't leave a paper trail. Why work so hard if it's too big to fail? And what's the point of feeding this machine if it won't make the world in our dreams where everybody's safe, no one's living in the streets? You never need to worry if you're gonna get to eat. Antarctica is covered in ice, and everybody's happy, and wouldn't that be nice? And I know one day my maker I will meet, when death's sweet kiss comes and sweeps me off my feet. I hope by then we've learned a little more. I'd like this place to be better than before, so everybody's safe, no one's living in the streets. You never need to worry if you're gonna get to eat. Antarctica is covered in ice, and everybody's happy, and wouldn't that be nice? Wouldn't that be nice? Wouldn't that be nice? Antarctica is covered in ice, and everybody's happy, and wouldn't that be nice? Oh, I'm so glad that I got to play that tune, you know? I gotta remind myself, it's good to play that song. It's good. It balms, it soothes my soul. It certainly does. It makes me feel good to play. It makes me feel good to send it into the world. Because the clinging on to the hope, that's the hardest part, I think. I admire people who can hang on to the hope. And hang on to the hope that we are going to, in fact, create a better life for the next generation, which seems to be, to me, to be one of the only reasons we have society in the first place. So that the next iteration... Yeah, I'm with you on this, Tash. I do despair for my niece and nephews, but it also fuels me to work to change things in my lifetime. Love the song. Thank you so much, Tash. I appreciate that a lot. I've known since the moment it first graced my guitar that song has power. I know it has power. And it was a blessing that was given to me, and my job is to give it to the rest of the world. It's something I need to remember. 19 years homeless and without family. Family let me back in 2019, then wham, COVID. Never lose hope. How about that, Dan? How about that? How is that for timing? It is easy to fall into despair. It is easy to fall into despair. And this sort of speaks to the larger thesis of this channel, which is... and Mystic, we just had Dan on and to have a nice conversation. If you go back on the stream, you can listen to him talk to us about his experiences. And my hope is when all of us on this chat leave this crummy world, the world would be a much better place. Oh, and all grown up. Yeah, we are facing a what it is we're doing here, to a degree, is grieving. That we are grieving the death of the capitalist system. And the death of the capitalist system, which is going to happen whether we like it or not, is being met by the populace in the same way that we would deal with the death of a loved one. That there are large segments of the populace that are in denial about it. That they still will come into a chat like this and defend a system that has already died. That they don't really recognize that what is occurring isn't even an attempt to salvage the capitalist system any longer. It's an attempt by our leadership to distribute the spoils. That is what we're witnessing today. And as we go through the denial and then into the anger, which you can see manifesting in the far right through the Republican Party in the United States and the People's Party of Canada here in Canada, and the bargaining that people are doing, that you see is very indicative of liberalism. That the liberals believe that they can bargain and negotiate their way out of the death of the capitalist system. And the depression, which I feel we all have felt, the despair. But then to move through that, and to know that there is acceptance, that there is the finding of meaning, that these things are real. That process, I think, is necessary for each of us to do. And honestly, speaking with a man like Dan reminds me that the best way to get through that conversation, this grieving of the death of our system, is with humility and compassion and empathy. That it will be easy for us to draw battle lines, but it's so much more difficult to find a way to cross those lines and find the friendship and the humanity of those who are even your opposition. I wish this world was a better place, maybe in the next century. Yeah, maybe in the next century. I mean, certainly in America, I do think America is facing a century of humiliation. That just as the Chinese went through a century of humiliation, I think the Americans are facing down the barrel of that gun and seem completely unable and unwilling to do anything to ameliorate it. Yes, I love this. Venezuela killed 200 million iPhones. Yeah, exactly. Like this unbelievable, like look at Venezuela became a real slogan that the UN released a report saying that what was happening in Venezuela was the sanctions, the regime of sanctions that the United States had put on Venezuela was killing its economy better than anything else. That basically killed the look at Venezuela talking point, and hopefully the UN report on the Uyghur genocide will have a similar effect, and hopefully it comes out before the assault begins. Because we are facing a situation where we're looking at the same thing as like the WMD lie, right? That the United States used a lie of, Saddam has weapons of mass destruction, and the weapons of mass destruction lie has spawned a 20-year spreading war that has no end in sight. And they're going to use a similar lie to justify the destruction that they plan on China. And China is not Iraq, so the conflagration is going to be much bigger. Find the joys inside the tears, yeah. Or, I mean, just cry. Just cry. The tears themselves count. So far, you're 50-0, John, as far as pro-capitalists coming on here trying to convince us otherwise. They always leave with crow in their mouth and tail between their legs. You're the undisputed champ. Well, it's not me. It's just the truth, right? That it's not hard to win a fight when you have the truth. That is just the case, right? Like the people who, and more often than not, the people who come in here, like they come in, they drop a quote and they leave, right? Like that's basically what happens, because they know they can't stand up against scrutiny. They understand that, even if it's just like knowledge that they have deep in themselves, right? Maybe it hasn't hit here yet, but they do understand and they do know that their position has no credibility, right? Like, why do you think so many of them just come in, drop a quote, and leave, right? Because they know they can't fight back, because they don't have a position anymore. Their position is literally dead, right? That the capitalist structure is gone. Like, the system is dead. There's no capitalists here. There's no capitalism, right? Like, everything is being operated and controlled by the state on behalf of the ownership class. That's not capitalism. I wish leftists were like you. The leftists I've seen and met in real life are batshit crazy. Well, and what you're seeing there, Mystic, is that life and the situation they're in does drive people into madness. And this is something I don't really talk about that often, because I don't like to denigrate leftists. I think that everybody's trying to fight the good fight and has their position, and I don't like to draw wedges, but like there's a mental health crisis happening in America and North America, right? And the mental health crisis is the death of the capitalist system. No one is talking about it. No one is dealing with it, except as they can on the day-to-day, right? And it drives people mad, right? That you have like isolated people who do research like I do, right? But they haven't funneled it into like a channel, or if they are attempting to, it's not being successful, or for whatever reason, and all of this kind of stuff. And it's maddening. It's maddening. Like, I can't imagine what it would have been like to be like a 30-year-old communist living in America as America went to war against Iraq. Like understanding fully that it is a lie. The WMD lie is obviously a lie. The rhetoric surrounding it, the hysteria surrounding it, the invasion into Iraq being like when that was happening, I was still a teenager. I was like 19, right? So I didn't have any real cognizant awareness of what was going on in the world, let alone the minutia of this particular conflict. But if I was like 35, like if I was who I am today, witnessing that, yeah, I could see how it could drive someone insane. Especially given how isolating they were, right? The internet wasn't really a thing. YouTube wasn't really a thing. None of this was really a thing. So you're extremely isolated, living with the truth that you can't convince anybody is the truth because the way the media machine works, the way everything operates, the way all of that kind of stuff does. And so, yeah, they're crazy. Of course they are. Wouldn't you? Like, wouldn't you be a little crazy? Right? So I have a lot of respect, especially for old leftists, especially for the old guard. Like you talk to your 60-year-olds and 70-year-olds who are leftists and they've always been leftists, right? Those guys are nuts. But they're right, and they're nuts for good reason, right? Because they've been driven mad. Like watch something like the Joker, like watch Joker, right? And you end up sympathizing with Joker. He is the protagonist of that piece. And if you walk away from Joker thinking to yourself, yeah, Joker is justified, that he is the protagonist of that piece, then you understand exactly the madness that the leftists are feeling. You understand precisely the madness of the leftists. That I am actually quite lucky because as I begin my journey and as I begin fighting back, there is this channel. There is this, like, what am I to do if I get banned off YouTube? I mean, I've got my Discord, basically, which if you want access to my Discord, you can donate $1 to my Patreon down below, and that will get you into the Discord, where we continue having discussions and continue organizing. But like, even like leftists of the past didn't even have that, right? So what are they doing? They're literally drawing up pamphlets and like distributing pamphlets and like contacting each other over the phone, creating like phone lists, right? Having meetings, all of that kind of stuff. Slow going, and easy to disrupt, no less. So I have a lot of respect for old crazy leftists because they've been driven mad. Do you have any recordings of your music somewhere? I'm working on it. This is one of these things, Tash, where I've just got to get my fucking act together. That's really what it is. Like, I have no excuses, no nothing. Because here's the holdup, and it's time that I be really upfront about it. I know that I need to monetize this music. I know that when people ask me, do you have recordings of your music somewhere, the response needs to be, yes, if you donate $5 to my Patreon, you get access to the Discord as well as my music collection. I know that I have to say that. And I know that I have to say that because I live in the capitalist system, and I don't want to. And so my solution has been to simply not record it, so that I don't have to say, yes, I do have my music. If you donate $5 to my Patreon, you get access to my music collection as well as the Discord. And I know that that's what's holding me up. And I'm having a really, really hard time getting over it. I'm having a really, really hard time getting over it. Because I don't want to sell this gift that was given to me for free. And I don't like that it's my comparative advantage or my skill. That kind of statement of like, if you can do something well, don't give it away for free. But it was given to me for free. The voice that I have, and the desire to play the guitar, and the desire to produce music, all of those things are in me, and they were given to me for free. I didn't pay for them. I didn't ask for them. The drive to write music and the drive to write poetry and all of that, I view it more as an affliction than I do as anything else. That it is a must do. And the idea that all of that I'm going to turn around and take this beautiful gift that was given to me from the energy of the universe or whatever you think, and that I am going to turn around and I am going to sell it for money because it's all I've got, that I am going to withhold it from you unless you give me $5. And so I will record it eventually, I will, and I will begin selling it eventually, I will. But I don't want to. I would much rather give it away for free. But that's not how this works. And I don't feel good about it. And I don't know, maybe I'll go mad and just give it away for free. Maybe I'll just do that anyway. Maybe I'll just straight up, just like, I'll record it and I'll just give it away for free. I don't know. 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 Okay. 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 We are getting to about that time, you guys. We're getting to the end of the stream. Another really lively one, another really lovely one. A lovely interview with Dan. Some nice music. A big, long conversation about sex. That's always fun, eh? Always fun. Sometimes you have to fight capitalism with capitalism. You have to fight fire with fire, yeah. I am going to close this one down a few minutes early, I think, today. Always remember, you guys, and I mean this from the very bottom of my chakra system. You are a divine being. You live in divine energy. Every person around you didn't ask to be here, doesn't know what they're doing here, and has within them a shard of knowledge that only they have, which is very simply the question, what is it you're here to do? Only you can answer it. Only you know. And these capitalists are spending hundreds of billions of dollars to prevent you from embarking on that journey of self-discovery, instead of spending even a penny to ameliorate the suffering that they themselves create. We shouldn't let them. Good luck. We're going to need it.